Oh, Christina, we're going to be muted for the next 5 minutes, and the password is Little Bear. And now, on a smooth Sunday night conversation, October 13th, 2024, on a special discussion, This Is My Brain. With us tonight is our special friend, Shane, the Smooth Man Trejo, and special guest, Christina Urso, coming in to talk about the Kidnap and Kill, an FBI terror plot of Governor Whitmer. I am the ever-present earwig, the real Tim Allen. Our ever-not-present Larry is not here tonight. This is my brain. Actually, it's not mine. It is our wonderful host, the man with the most. Here is Jeremy Scott Gibbs.
Yay! Welcome. All right, let's double check real quick, everybody, as we get the show started. Christina, can you hear us still?
Yes. I can
Okay, and I can hear her. We can probably bring her up just a hair in the ears there, Tim.
Yes.
All right, very good.
Let me go to the overlay and watch everything break.
Yeah,
Okay.
Watch everything break.
Nope.
No, it's going to be good.
All the graphics
it's going to be good.
came up.
No,
This is
yeah.
Yep.
I want to shift, but then I don't want to shift. I want to shift. Welcome back, Shane and Christina. This is actually not
Christina,
your.
Let's grab Christina just as she takes a drink of water.
Yes, perfect. This isn't actually your first time. You called in. I want to say 9 months ago.
Yeah,
maybe?
when we had Eric Molitor, William, Michael Null.
Yeah.
Yeah, she called in.
Yeah.
And that was a really informative podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm excited to get this show going and pick your brain. As you guys know in our audience, we're long format, so we're gonna dive into some stuff because you've been making the rounds and doing a lot of interviews. I recently caught you on InfoWars. I believe it was Christy Lee that was interviewing you, right? Was that
Yes.
Christy Lee on the American Journal? Great interview, but it was, you're trying to cram everything in. So I was like, you know what? However we want to explore this. And I'm so looking forward to the documentary coming out, Kidnap and Kill, an FBI terror plot, the fake plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. I was afraid for my life.
Yeah, no.
They were gonna kill me.
Where would be her audio input? Oh, here we go.
There it
Christina, give me one more mic check.
Testing.
Where is she coming through the tower?
I don't know, buddy. No, she should be on the whatever input you have her on on the board.
Which they're not even on. What if we do this? Maybe we have to. So we're getting her through the laptop connection.
Right. That should be through the HDMI.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we didn't turn you up. Is there any way you can turn you up at all on your side? You're all the way up
She's all the way
in the software. Or Trejo, is there a way you can turn up the output of your laptop?
Whatever that means.
No.
Yeah. I'm not seeing an isolated source.
No,
of
it's
her
good.
audio.
She's
Okay.
if we can't figure it, that's great.
Well, just bring your mic in and just make sure you're speaking.
Yeah, she's good.
Only into your mic. You're good to go.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay.
Sweet.
I just don't want to hear me more than I hear you,
Right.
which is typical being a loud person. All right, let's do this. Let's get the show rolling. Welcome everybody in the show there.
You gonna take your own disclaimer, or you want me to do that?
I
too?
want you to do the disclaimer.
Double
Or I can do the
down.
disclaimer. It doesn't matter.
Train. Hey, have Trejo do it.
You know what? I got a great idea.
You know what? It's glad you thought.
Why
of
don't
it.
I have Trejo do it?
It's so amazing,
Dude, I just thought of that. I don't know where it came from.
Yeah, no.
Trejo.
This is my brain. Notice this podcast is mostly raw and unfiltered and completely politically incorrect. We say Merry Christmas and the Pledge of Allegiance, especially the part about one nation under God. We thank our troops for their service. We only recognize two genders. As adults, we enjoy adult beverages. We cuss. We do not curse or swear. We love Jesus, but hate religion and hate religious hypocrites.
Assholes.
And if any of this offends you, love it or leave it.
Love it or leave it. You
Yep.
should have left by now. So
You
there it
know
is.
where
There it
you
is.
are.
And we're gonna skip the rest of our disclaimers and get right into this conversation. Christina, what I want to do, I'm going to start out with the trailer, and then I want to come back from that and have you just introduce yourself to all of our audience, and then go down. After that, we'll go down whatever road you want to go down. But I want to do the trailer right away so we get that out and popping off. So let me make sure my thing is doing right. There it is. And I'm going to go full screen. And
Are you on the right page?
things are working.
Yay.
And we go now to new developments in the plot to kidnap and kill Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
13 suspects arrested, including 7 alleged members of a right-wing militia group
Who are preparing to kidnap and possibly kill me.
The defense claims the FBI, through undercover agents and informants, were behind the plan, and that Fox and Croft were duped into going along with it.
What the FBI did is unconscionable.
It's almost like they had their evidence, had their facts, and created the crime.
Let's get a plan together to attack our governors all at the same time.
We can cloud the water. We can send everybody into disarray and chaos.
He's the perfect chameleon. He knew exactly what to say, how to say it.
Dan Chappell was the driving force of it all.
He was there to lead. He was there to orchestrate.
I think he viewed us as an opportunity.
Everything here is a lie or a manipulation.
It's almost impossible to fathom how brazen, how bold, and how dangerous these individuals were.
Thank you to the fearless FBI agents.
Inside the takedown of the FBI agent who led one of the nation's biggest domestic terror investigations.
If you can think of a synonym for patriots, think of terrorists.
You're seeing the exact same methodology being used without difference.
Everything about this case was a terrorism attack, I agree, by the FBI.
Unlimited power, unlimited money. My biggest fear is being, called a terrorist from the nation that I love.
Your entire life could be taken away from you for something you didn't do.
What they've done is destroying lives.
And I will not stop until he's free or I die.
Wow.
A saying we have in my office is don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
That is awesome. I'll tell you what, I know you're still working on it. And one of the things we're going to do tonight is talk about how people can help fund this, because you're still working on a lot of that. And I think the video goes on to say that, but I wanted to stop it right there so you could start to say it in your own words again for our audience. But this, that just from an editing standpoint, there was so much encapsulated in just that amount of just 2 minutes of a trailer. That's phenomenal. So, Christina, let's do this. You are an independent journalist. So let's start there, or do you want to go even further back? Obviously, you're a patriot and you're impassioned about this particular subject, but I want to get the audience a feel for who you are and why this is so passionate to you, not just being a journalist.
Well, prior to being a journalist, I was a paralegal. So I have experience in, the legal system as a paralegal for many years. And so I have that background, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't like what I saw in the legal sphere, shall we say. I didn't, going into it, I had because I was in the criminal justice program in high school, and I thought that I had the Law and Order CSI view of the criminal justice system. And then when you experience it and you go, oh, this entire thing is actually it's a sham system. It's there to perpetuate itself. And these cases are these judges, prosecutors, district attorneys, their jobs are all reliant on there being continual cases, right? So it's just a machine that is being constantly fed to keep itself afloat. So I had that understanding. And from that, I decided I wanted to kind of do independent journalism, and I wanted to focus on stories that were underreported, because there's tons of that. Right. And the media always covers things in a certain way that I think is inappropriate. So at the time that all of this was happening, I'd been an independent journalist for a while, and I knew immediately when these guys were arrested that we weren't being told
it didn't pass the smell
correct
test
story. Yeah. I had been looking into FBI corruption specifically. At that time, I had been researching a group called the Order of Nine Angles. I don't know if you're familiar with this.
No,
this organization.
Yeah, tell us.
To give a little background, it is a satanic neo-Nazi organization. So the Order of Nine Angles
is that kind of like Adam Waffen?
Yes, very similar.
Okay.
Although the distinction is that the Order of Nine Angles is older. and it was created by a guy named David Myatt, who was probably working for U.S. intelligence or British intelligence, and he appears to have been a Gladio operative. If people are familiar with Gladio, if they're not, I would encourage them to look into what the Gladio operations were. This is something that was done by the U.S. government to counter the Soviet Union, where they kind of created and propped up fascistic groups to oppose communism and to kind of oppose the spread of communism. And then these groups kind of morphed and became in a very similar way, right, to how like the U.S. government trained the Mujahideen, which then morphs into Al-Qaeda. In a very similar fashion. That's kind of what happened with Gladio. So Order of Nine Angles is this satanic neo-Nazi group, but it infuses bizarre like Hinduism and weird occultist stuff. The gentleman who was running the American chapter of the Order of Nine Angles was a man named Joshua Caleb Sutter, who turned out to be a longtime FBI informant who's been on the FBI payroll since 2003 when he was arrested on a gun charge. And so I learned over the course of my research into this group that the FBI had been essentially propping up a satanic neo-Nazi organization that promotes things like pedophilia and mass murder.
Now,
and
you warned us, I sorry to interrupt, but you did warn us that there's a lot of information in this topic and that you could go. And the Mujahideen, is that, did I read about them in Dune? Was that guy in Dune?
No, it's different.
That's a different guy. Okay, just check.
Totally different.
Okay. Yeah.
No, continue.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so the American chapter of the 09A, it's run by this guy who it turns out he's an FBI informant. And then we find out that the FBI has been funding their publishing house, a publishing house called Martinet Press, to the tune of like $200,000. And Martinet Press is publishing books like Liber 333 and Iron Gates. These are books that specifically promote pedophilia, mass cullings, as they call it, human sacrifice, Satanism, bizarre things. And so I'm thinking to myself, why is the FBI like running a neo-Nazi Satanist group, and then they're telling the public that the greatest threat America faces is white supremacy? So that was like, you know, my forays into this. From there,
they want to call us domestic terrorists.
Exactly.
Exactly, right? So I start looking into, you know, what else has the FBI been doing? And I started researching PatCon. So I was looking into things like Waco, Ruby Ridge, Oklahoma City. And then, of course, the Whitmer thing happened. So it was very fortuitous that I just happened to be looking into this stuff at the time. And I immediately was like, oh, when I saw that, I thought this is just PatCon 2.0.
Yeah. I noticed when you talked, it's been tied together a lot of times, but when you talked on InfoWars, you, was it the FBI, the guy who was running this whole Whitmer kidnapping plot ended up being the same guy that was in charge of January 6th? Isn't that how it worked?
There is a connection there. What I will say is that there were many agents and field offices that were a part of this investigation, because the investigation actually spans across like 15 different states. A lot of people don't know that. There was 2 different operations that the FBI claims merged together. An operation called Kessel Run, and then Operation Cold Snap.
Did they do it in 14 or 12 parsecs?
12.5 parsecs, Kessel Run. That's what it was.
I just want to know.
It's a wild thing. So there were many different agents who worked on this. Who you're talking about specifically is a gentleman named Stephen D'Antuono. So this guy was the head of the Detroit field office who did oversee certain parts of this case. Certainly he would have oversaw an event that occurred in April of 2020 called the American Patriot Rally. This was a rally in April. I believe it was April 30th. There was one on the 15th, an anti-lockdown pro-2A event. And then there was one on the 30th. The one on the 30th would have been a big event for the FBI, we'll just say.
And his name again?
We can talk about that.
His name again, D'Antuono?
Stephen D'Antuono. So he's the special agent in charge of the Detroit field office. And the date that this event is happening, it involves so many people were showing up to this event. It was not something put on by the Wolverine Watchmen or the defendants in the case. They were just showing up to an event that was already being put on. They showed up, armed in their full kit, they call it. So like their plate carriers, and they were wearing masks and stuff. And they stood in line, went through COVID screening protocols, and then occupied the Capitol for a little bit and then left.
Right.
And so this was portrayed, though, as sort of in the media, like right-wing groups storming capitals.
Of course.
And certainly the FBI used it to try to recruit more individuals into the Wolverine Watchmen and to funnel more people into their hoax. So Stephen D'Antuono would have been overseeing the Detroit field office as this, quote, storming of the Capitol happens. And it also involves the FBI instructing, the Lansing Capitol Police to stand down, open the doors, and let everybody in. And so 1 week after these guys were arrested, they were arrested October 7th and 8th of 2020. Another guy was arrested about a week after that. And so 1 week later, October 13th, D'Antuono is promoted by Christopher Wray from the SAC of the Detroit field office to be the assistant director of the Washington, D.C. field office, where he will oversee another, quote, storming of the Capitol. That also seems to involve the use of numerous FBI informants and undercovers.
Okay, now, again, Christina, I don't want to cut you off too often, but because there's so much information, I know a lot of people don't know all the details. There's a lot of dates. I was enthralled by this story initially, and the first immediate thing I saw in this is when it is a full-length feature motion picture produced by you, that this character, Stephen, should be played by our ever-famous Jesus character. No, I'm serious, because this main character, in his Paul story, turning around after he does all this nefarious stuff, could come to Jesus moment.
Well, he hasn't done that yet.
No, he hasn't done that yet. But if you were to make the film where he does do that, and then he sees it and he realizes how evil he is. But Jesus, the character who played Jesus, the actor who played Jesus, Caviezel, would be amazing in that role.
Oh, I love that guy.
Caviezel would be amazing in this role as that character, as I heard this whole story. But anyway, so I don't mean to interrupt too much, but there's a lot of detail.
So funny. Well, what's interesting about that is that D'Antuono kind of he faked having one of these come to Jesus moments, right? So after he oversees January 6th, and think about this too. This is a guy who spent his career in the FBI. He is promoted to this special position, to be the assistant director of the Washington, D.C. field office. That's a big accomplishment for him. You'd think that he would stick with that position for a while, but no. After January 6th, D'Antuono participates in the raid on Mar-a-Lago. Now, interestingly, after this, is that he has a, quote, come to Jesus moment where he actually blows the whistle, quote unquote, which is, he doesn't really do it, but he testifies to the House Oversight Committee in a closed door setting where he says that he thought the raid on Mar-a-Lago was political. He raised some concerns about it. And then he leaves the FBI and he goes and works for KPMG consultancy. So I thought that was very interesting. He's been brought back and he was asked questions again. I don't believe they're even put under oath when they do this. He was asked about the Whitmer case and he maintained that, oh no, that was all done by the book. That was all above board. So he's not really had a come to Jesus moment.
Right.
He had a CYA moment of, I don't want to be attached to this highly political raid that I just participated in and conducted.
Yep.
Because that's one of the one that's more visible that that the people involved could be eventually held accountable for, versus this Whitmer, which is so convoluted and so all over the place, just like January 6th. Without January 6th and all the video footage coming out, and a lot of they've suppressed so many testimonies. They suppressed all these people. We know that a bunch of the Proud Boys, right, were convicted, and they weren't Oath Keepers. They weren't even there, and they got convicted. So, bring us up to speed. The men that were charged, how many of them are in jail? How many were acquitted? We've gone over these numbers before, but I know you have your pulse on this, so I want to hear how many are still in jail and are languishing some of their sentence time lengths for this total hoax, this BS. Some of them took plea deals just to thinking that it would leave, and that never happens with the government. If you show them your belly, they'll stab you in it. You know.
Exactly. Right now, as it stands, so I kind of wanted to break down the charges too, because of the convoluted nature of this, so everybody understands exactly what these guys were charged with, and then where we stand right now in the legal process. So, 14 men in total were arrested and charged. 6 were charged at the federal level for conspiracy to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. They added a superseding indictment to 3 of those guys for WMDs, which is outrageous. So there's 6 charged federally, and then there's 8 gentlemen.
3 with additional WMDs.
Yeah, they were charged with WMDs.
But not the guy that tried to shoot Trump down in Florida at the golf course.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
Okay. And we can talk about what the WMDs were in the
because it can't mean the acronym
and all this other nonsense. But so just to break down the other charges, 8 guys were charged at the state level for, quote, providing material support to presumably a terrorist act, although none occurred. No terrorist act was committed. And then they were charged with gang affiliation and felony firearms. The felony firearms is an automatic charge where they basically say, because you were carrying a firearm in the commission of a felony, which was apparently the, quote, providing material support, somehow these guys are charged with all of that. So
this is just all a house of cards, no matter how you do it. But the government likes to use as much super glue as they can to keep that standing while they shelter it from any wind.
They got a lot of money to keep it going.
100%.
Well, that's true. And they have also a lot of political cover. They have cover in the media. The media doesn't talk about this case. And if they do, they're literally just regurgitating FBI and DOJ press releases.
Yep.
Or just quoting from the criminal complaint verbatim, again, just reading the government's narrative, not really looking any further into the case or into who these guys are, how they came into this, at the different stages and points in their lives. And I do want to note, too, that as far as I know, nobody in Michigan, in the state of Michigan, has ever been charged with these specific charges. This is like a test bed case. It's a guinea pig case to see what they can get away with. And the reason why, and I want to stress this and make this clear, is because if this case is allowed to stand, they use this precedent to go after you. And I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that. That's literally the plan. That's the 100%. Goal. That's why they did this and orchestrated the entire thing. So this is creating like a new precedent, basically, for saying, 5 or more people that are getting together and have similar goals or beliefs are now a gang. You can now be a gang. So if you go play bingo on the weekends, we got 5 ladies.
Our euchre club is fine. We're only 4. We're good. Euchre club's only 4.
But you're exactly right. This is the overblown. It's the Patriot Act combined with the RICO statute, kind of rolled into one, where you're affiliated with somebody, and no matter what's going on, and then the Patriot Act, and now they're trying to ramp it up and create as much color of law.
And conservative and right wing circles, you get people who, if you get together, have a few drinks, start popping off about how much you hate the government. One guy in the room records it, takes it out of context. Suddenly, you're charged with material support for terrorism, and you're facing the rest of your life in prison.
Right.
Yeah, that's like literally what happened to these guys. I know there were a lot of people who, for whatever reason, they assumed that for the FBI to have investigated these guys, like they must have been doing something, or they assumed that they committed some crime. Maybe they didn't try to kidnap her, but they were doing something, or
it wasn't just wrong place at the right time.
Yeah, like they people have like and I mean people on our side, is severe misunderstanding of like how you can be completely set up and framed, and how the government controls the entire thing. And I mean the entire they are doing the investigation. They are the ones indicting you. The FBI sits there with the prosecutors, and they're the ones that are running the actual trial and presenting the evidence. Like they pick the jury. they literally pick the initial jury pool and then whittle it down. It's just an insane process. They pick your public defenders. So
it's the epitome
whole
of the show
thing,
trial.
yeah, it literally is. And there's just the appearance of this somehow being like legitimate, and I want to make it clear that it's not. Like, this is actually worse than the Soviet Union, because people at least knew, like, in the Soviet Union, they knew that they had a secret police. They knew that the secret police planted evidence on people or would just manufacture stuff. They literally said, show me the man and I'll show you the crime, because they could make it up.
Right.
So like, Americans think that, oh, we have the Constitution, we're in a democracy or whatever. It's really a constitutional republic, but the Constitution was shredded a long time ago. So no, you don't have due process. You don't have freedom of association. You don't have any of those things. And we know this because of the Whitmer case and how the case was run. So to answer your question and get back to breaking down where we stand right now.
Mhm.
So we had 6 men charged federally with conspiracy and WMDs. We had 8 charged at the state level, not federally, for providing material support, gang affiliation, and felony firearms. Now, this was broken up into 4 trials. The first trial was, I believe, March of 2022. And 2 men took plea deals right before the trial. So the first person to take a plea deal was a kid named Ty Garbin. He was a airplane mechanic. And his lawyer is former FBI. He took a plea deal before any of the discovery had come in that actually showed a lot of the entrapment. So I am unsure about him and whether or not he was kind of coerced into taking a plea deal. I know that the government comes down on these people and they tell you, like, they first of all tell you you're going to be hit with all these charges and make you think that you're looking at life in prison.
Yep.
And then your public defender tells you, well, the government has a 96% conviction rate. And in cases that argue entrapment, is actually higher than that. It's a 98.9% conviction rate. So they basically tell you that the odds are stacked against you. It's in the government's favor. They have unlimited resources. So they kind of scare people, I think, into taking these plea deals. And I think that that's part of a legal strategy from the DOJ and FBI, because they don't want these cases going to trial, because then we learn like what the FBI was doing here. Could you imagine if these guys got arrested and they all took plea deals? We never would have known what the FBI did, how many informants they used, how many undercovers they used, how they manufactured the whole thing.
Right.
We'd be in the dark,
And
which is scary.
And it's so difficult to fight against that. And this is not new. Back when the crash in 2008 happened, I believe it was, he's been out for, this is 10 years ago. A friend of mine was convicted for the mortgage. He was wrapped up in the mortgage scams, the mortgage fraud that was going on, the liar loans and stuff like that. He was convicted on 2 counts of attempted wire fraud of $625,000 or more. Okay. They told him, just take the plea deal or we're going to charge you with the whole $40 million scam that the other 7 defendants were all equally involved in, to a more or lesser extent. They said, either take the deal or we're going to charge you with the full $40 million on this. So he's freaked out, right? He's talking with the FBI, giving them all the inside information because he was on a lower level.
Oh no.
The 2 counts of wire fraud were 4.25 years, both incidences, right? Supposed to be run concurrent. The prosecutor went up at the sentencing and said to the judge, we want to make an example out of this guy. And said, can you change it to where one is 4 years and the other one is 4.5 years? So it'll be a total of 8.5 years.
To stack it. Yeah.
Which is against federal law to take 2 identical counts and stack them like that. So they had to change it. They did it right there on the bench. And my friend spent the better part of 8.5 years in prison, missed, the better part of his kids growing up. And really to me is not the same guy that he went in as. It took a lot out of him. It broke him in a lot of ways. But I know firsthand that conviction rate is such a scam, and they threaten you with everything. And for the number of guys that stood up against it, it shows their strength of character,
I want to say that the court facilitates that. Like, you think that the judges don't know, or the the public defenders don't know what's going on.
Yep.
They all know. The judges are deferential to the government, which is mind-boggling to me in a constitutional republic where you're looking at working class, almost indigent people who have to have public defenders.
Yep.
Why on earth would the government be given deferential treatment and treated as if they don't do any wrong? Well, most of these judges worked for the government. They literally were career prosecutors, then they become judges. So they are deferential to their people.
Yep.
There isn't really the separation between like the FBI and the judicial system, or the DOJ in the judicial system. There isn't a checks and balances. They actually collaborate. They work together to orchestrate their scams, to perpetuate their jobs, the money that they make off the backs of regular people. They collude. There is no checks and balances of one side's watching. Like, the courts aren't watching the FBI. They don't care. They literally agree with everything the FBI says. That was very clear at this trial, and how Judge Yonker behaved, and just the way that they treated the defense lawyers versus the prosecutors. And, we can kind of get into that. So I just want to answer that question of like where this stands right now. So we had that first trial that ended in 0 convictions. 2 people took plea deals. I will say Caleb Franks, I believe, was coerced. He took his a month before trial. His lawyer had been arguing entrapment and fighting it. His lawyer actually had some of the best filings, in my opinion, where he was linking the Whitmer case to January 6th and talking about how this whole thing was entrapment. So I was very surprised that Caleb Franks took this plea deal the month before. But from what I understand, he was facing additional charges for some ghost gun scheme that this informant, Dan Chappell, got him involved in peripherally while this was going on, just because they like to have multiple things they can, hold against you if they want to. And
it's all leverage.
He got caught smuggling Suboxone into prison, so they were going to force him to do a mental health evaluation and potentially face charges for that. So he was looking at essentially life and then the terrorism enhancements and whatnot. So I feel like he was really forced into doing that. And so they had 4 people go to trial at the first trial. Adam Fox and Barry Croft, who they dubbed the, quote, ringleaders of this, and then Daniel Harris and Brandon Caserta. That first trial ends in 0 convictions for the government, which is very unheard of in these cases where
normally it's
you're
open
really
and shut.
Arguing entrapment. It almost doesn't happen. So I think that in and of itself was incredible. I remember they were initially not going to be allowed to argue entrapment, but they couldn't get through the first day of trial without literally going into it, because every single aspect of this, when you start pulling on the threads and investigating it, it leads you right back to the FBI or their informants. So they had to allow them to argue entrapment. But for the state guys, they weren't allowed to raise entrapment as a defense. The state of Michigan, unlike in the federal system, has it so that the judge gets to decide if you're allowed to argue entrapment, not a jury, which I find bizarre, because if you were entrapped, that's going to be your defense. They can't tell you you're not allowed to defend they're literally depriving you of your right to defend yourself by saying you can't mention entrapment. You can't even utter the word entrapment at trial. That is what they said in the final state case.
Wow. Is that something you end up having to prove? Like, you had to show evidence to show entrapment if you were to use that as a defense?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And they
But you
make it
can't
very
even argue
difficult,
that.
of course.
Wow.
To do that, because the government controls all of the evidence. They don't always turn over all of the exculpatory information they're supposed to turn
They edit
over.
recordings on the way to and back from trips. They do stuff like
They
that.
do stuff like this. They plant things on people.
Mhm.
Then they admit to that if they need to and act like, oh, it's no big deal. We do that all the time. It's pretty crazy. So that ended in 2 acquittals and a mistrial on Adam and Barry. And so I want to explain the trajectory here because this is important. They could not have the trials for the 8 men that they charged with providing material support to a terrorist act if they didn't first have convicted terrorists, right? So there's no, if Adam and Barry aren't convicted in this retrial of them, you know, after this first trial ends in no convictions, then you can't charge the other state guys. You can't pursue those cases.
There's no terrorist to support.
Yeah, they had to get Adam and Barry in a retrial. The retrial was even worse than the first trial. To explain how this went down, the defense was highly limited on what information they could introduce. There is there's hundreds of what they called out of court statements that the defense wanted to get in. This is all things that like informants said on recording devices that was recorded of them basically orchestrating the whole thing. Now, Judge Yonker came up with what he called a hearsay ruling to proclaim that the informants saying things on a recording was somehow hearsay because the informants aren't agents of the government. They're acting as agents of the government. They are literally operating with FBI handlers, instructing them every step of the way. In all intents and purposes, they are acting as agents of the government. They may not be official agents. They're not agents, but they're still acting under the behest and direction of the federal government, right? So he claimed that, say that you had a meeting that was 4 hours long, and these men said something, and they played like a minute and 17-second clip of one of the guys saying something.
Right, completely out of context.
Here's some booze, here's some beers, here's some weed. Let's get them talking, and something we can take out of context to build our fake case.
Yeah, so that same recording where the informant was talking, they wouldn't let that come in. So how can you play parts of the recording that is good and beneficial for the government? That can come in, but the other statements made on the same recording somehow is hearsay. Hearsay is when somebody is relaying to you something that somebody else said. So it's not like you don't have a direct recording. You're basically operating on hearsay, what somebody heard and said they heard. It is not an actual recording of somebody's voice. It's not hearsay. Okay.
So he labeled anything that the defense brought out of the same recordings as hearsay, yet the federal government's, when they brought out the recording, they said it was verbatim. This is evidence.
Yeah. So they're literally just cherry picking. Oh, this sounds good. This is incriminating against these men. That goes in. Anything that was exculpatory for these guys, that's hearsay. Even again, a recording from the same thing that they just played part of, and it isn't hearsay when it's literally the informant speaking on the audio device.
100%.
It's just amazing to me that they were allowed. So this is actually one of the things that is an issue on appeal. So that was one of the things that really hamstrung the defense initially, is that you can introduce the evidence that shows literally how your clients were entrapped. So there's that. Every single defense witness was intimidated off the stand outside the presence of the jury. So there's 14 men that were charged in this, but there's also another 20 unindicted co-conspirators. This is
how many?
The government
how many was
claims.
that?
20.
Another 20 on top of the 14.
Yeah, we've been putting up. I know you don't see this, Christina, but we've been putting up the image of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the 14 periodically as you've been mentioning names. So yeah, just to let people
another
know
20 people
on top of that,
unindicted co-conspirators.
Unindicted co-conspirators.
Don't you like the word co-conspirator? It's another one of those oxymoronic. You're either a conspirator or you're not. To be a co-conspirator is retarded. But anyways,
it's so bizarre, right? It's like this is all novel stuff that they're basically just pulling out of their hat post 9/11.
You can say ass.
We can say ass here.
Pull it out of your ass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't like to curse.
It's cussing. Did you not hear the disclaimer intro?
I did hear it, but I got to maintain my purity.
So 20 more people indicted as conspirators.
Yeah. So many people don't know this. There's this is a massive thing, 20 unindicted co-conspirators. What does it really mean, right? Who are these people? How does the government claim that they're unindicted co-conspirators. What it is that the government put on a series of militia meetings and what they call FTXs, that stands for field training exercise. This is something that is well known in the militia communities. This is the kind of thing that they do all the time. It's perfectly legal. They do defensive firearms training, medical training, what have you. And this is the kind of thing that you can pay to get. So if somebody attended maybe one meeting, maybe they attended an FTX, but they weren't really part of the Wolverine Watchmen, or they weren't really part of a militia group, they're just somebody that kind of was there, but like the government wasn't able to get enough information on them to frame them as a participant in this. So they weren't charged, but they say that they're unindicted co-conspirators. So when these people wanted to show up to testify on these guys' behalf, one by one, again, outside the presence of the jury, they brought them up to the stand, and the government told them, well, you're an unindicted co-conspirator, like you're technically still under investigation. And if you do testify, just know that if you do say something that is potentially incriminating, you could also face charges, and you could even be arrested leaving the courthouse.
Yeah, because we have your name because you attended one of these fishing treason expeditions, FTXs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That to me, like, the fact this happened, in America, where they could, that is outright witness tampering, witness intimidation.
100%.
Oh, you could testify, but if you do, you might get charged, and we might arrest you as you're leaving the court. That's going to scare people, and they know what they did to these men. They know these guys, like they know that they were just hanging out, shooting the shit, smoking weed, getting drunk while the FBI was filming them, and they're probably thinking to themselves, well, if they could do this to these guys, I probably shouldn't testify because they can and will do it to me. And look, they're getting away with it. So they scare people like this.
Yeah, look what one of the things, after 9/11 and the Patriot Act and the global war on terror, they started doing these sort of stings to Muslim people. They find a mentally disturbed Muslim guy.
Well, that was the first guy in the first Trade Center bombing.
Yep, they would find like an unhinged guy online. They would gas him up and get him to say crazy things. They would promulgate some sort of attack, and then when the guy would show up to the meeting, they would swarm him and say, "Oh, look, we stopped this terror attack. Look at us. We're doing such a great job.
Right?
Give us more money. Give us more in next year's budget." So they were doing this against Muslims.
Was it Oklahoma
after 9/11? But
was
now,
it Oklahoma City where the budget was about ready to get cut way down? And just
probably
into it, I want to say that's which one it was. It was one of these cooked up
but,
terror.
It's got the switch of terrorism. The terror threat went from being Muslims to now it's white patriotic Trump supporters. So now
100%.
all those resources that went into framing Muslims and ruining their lives, it's being focused on us now. And
ultra megas.
Unless even if Trump gets in there, it's going to be. He's going to have to go to war with these people. They're not going to give up power. The permanent government
and there's
of America.
There's a chilling effect, especially after, these guys have our attention, obviously being here in Michigan, and we knowing that Whitmer is a dictator in chief sitting up there in Lansing. So they have our attention, but the January 6th is the attention that people get. And that is so much of a chilling effect, along with General Flynn, Roger Stone, Rudy Giuliani, Alex Jones. We can keep going down the list. Of course, Owen Schroyer, but all these guys that have been charged for these frivolous things, and then all of the people, again, in January 6th. It's just this idea of they're the ones that are doing the terrorism. They're terrorizing people. They want to, by instituting what you said, Christina, instituting this idea of more than 5 people getting together, or 5 or more getting together, that could be a gang association. Well, what is that doing? That's trying to divide and conquer us, because they know, as united patriots, united people, we're not going to put up with this bullshit. We're going to say, no, you're not going to do this. But if they keep us separated, if you keep these 20 unindicted co-conspirators in such a terror state, in such a fear mode, that they don't want to stick their head up out of, and for fear of it getting chopped off, that they don't testify and defend their fellow human beings against trumped up charges, then we all fail. You know, it's the Solzhenitsyn, right? I wasn't Jewish when they came for the Jews, so I didn't stand up for them. And I wasn't this when they came for that group. And I wasn't this when they came for that group. And then finally they came for me, and there was nobody else left. We've got to stand up for each other. You know, I mean, I think it's crazy right now, not crazy, but wild that the Muslims down in Dearborn have come out in force backing Trump.
Well, a lot are backing Trump, mayor. But even more are just saying, fuck you, Kamala. We're going to vote third party or not vote at all.
100%.
And that
huge. Scares them. And they're so terrified. They've known for a long time that this is coming. The FBI, along with a lot of other nefarious organizations in our government, have been working for a long time to erode our true constitutional rights, or our true rights enshrined by the Constitution, and trying to do this. And I've seen it firsthand myself. You're seeing it. And so you've been passionate about this documentary. I know in the trailer, if we were to continue it, you talk about how much traveling you've done. Now, I thought most of the people were here in Michigan, but I know you're out of state. And so are you interviewing some of these 20 unindicted co-conspirators, or if people left the state as soon as they could to get away from it? Talk to me about that.
Well, they had people across the country. So, you know, it wasn't just guys in Michigan, right? They had people, you know, up and down the state of Michigan. They also, Barry Croft, one of the guys framed as a ringleader, he's from Bear, Delaware. He's not even from Michigan. Some of the guys that were targets, like you had a guy in Wisconsin. You had a target in Virginia, a disabled Vietnam veteran named Frank Butler. Frank, of course, is an unindicted co-conspirator, but Frank was somebody who was, the FBI was working on him via 2 informants, actually numerous informants. I actually want to read to you some of the things that they were saying to Frank Butler.
Okay.
But they were trying to get Frank to manufacture homemade explosives with household items like Drano and sugar. The FBI actually sent him instructions for how to make homemade explosives, like a recipe, and then they told him to double the ingredients. So I just want people to think about this. You're telling an elderly disabled veteran to manufacture homemade explosives to double the ingredients. Now, he lives in a neighborhood. What if he was trying to manufacture this and there was an accident and he blew up his entire block?
Right.
Right.
Would that be considered a meth explosion after that? They would wash their hands of it and call it a meth lab. He was probably running a meth lab at 85.
It's like, what were they thinking throughout this entire thing? And they also offered the use of an explosives-laden drone to him for an attack on Ralph Northam's North Carolina vacation cottage. So the FBI, their pedophile informant, Steve Robeson, is offering the use of an explosives-laden drone for an assault on a Democratic governor's house.
Is that Ralph? Is that keep him alive and have a discussion, Ralph Northam? Keep him alive and we'll have a discussion whether we take care of the baby or not.
Blackface Northam,
Blackface Northam. I mean, you know, that's our tax dollars at work. You know,
100%.
That's what you know.
I mean, we don't have to ship all of the missiles overseas. We can keep a few here and try to go blow up a governor. I mean, that's the FBI. Probably some wise thinking by the FBI. Just hand it over to a guy who doesn't have a clue.
I got a question.
That's wild.
I know there's one of the things I remember reading was that there was a guy who was gunned down by police in, I think Madison Heights or Clawson.
Madison Heights.
Yeah, and he had some kind of connection to the whole plot. And can you talk about that? And has there been any like additional light kind of shined on what exactly happened there? Because it was a very bizarre story.
His name is Eric Mark Matthew Allport. He actually has a connection to Ruby Ridge. This is fascinating. When he was a kid, his mother, Judy Grider, was neighbors with the Weaver family. So I believe it was her, may even have been him as a kid. He was friends with the Weaver son. And I think he may have been 12 at the time that I don't know if you want to call it like a standoff happened. And so I believe his mother or him actually delivered messages from, I believe, the FBI to the Weaver family.
Oh,
So there
wow.
was that connection, like when he was a kid.
Okay.
And so obviously we know that the FBI targeted Randy Weaver for an entrapment hoax. You know, they actually had, I
100%.
believe, an informant sell him a firearm that was illegal by like 1/4 of an inch and tried to use that to coerce him into becoming an informant against the Aryan nations.
Yep.
And of course, he didn't want to do that. So they, of course, sent FBI snipers to his house, murdered his son, murdered his dog, and shot his wife while she held a baby in her arms.
Yep.
That's what they did there. And
Yep.
so this young man, Eric Mark Matthew Allport, saw that, of course, as a kid. And he grows up. He has some issues with the law. I believe petty stuff. He goes to prison for a little bit, but he comes out. He's a felon. He's technically not allowed to own a firearm, but he's, you know, getting his life back together. He's working with canines. So he's like training these dogs. The government claims he was affiliated with the Boogaloo movement. So that's the connection to the Whitmer case, because they claim the same thing about them.
You just made that word up.
Part
I
of
don't
the
believe that's even
Boogaloo.
real. That's-
Right.
that's
It's
made up.
literally like a Fed creation. They just pull this stuff, you know,
out of their ass.
It was
their
like
butts.
a silly meme that was basically seized upon by the feds to
Yeah.
let's find some more patsies and get some of these fake plots going.
Right. So they say this guy was affiliated with the Boogaloo movement and that he purchased a firearm that he wasn't allowed to have. And so one day before the FBI arrests these men in the Whitmer hoax, they engage in what I would call an assassination
Sounds
of
like
Eric Mark Matthew Allport in a Texas Roadhouse parking lot. So again, think about the logistics of why would they do this? The FBI, okay, when they're surveilling people, like they have the ability to, they're tracking you on your phone. They can, you know, so they can geolocate you, but they also have drones they can fly. Like there's at no point, like, would they need to approach this man in a public parking lot where there are civilians all around, you know,
Unless
where
they want to
something
show.
could happen, unless
Yeah.
yeah, it's just really weird. Like, why wouldn't you just go arrest him at his house or while he was going to work?
Maybe
Why
that
do
Texas Roadhouse
this?
had a rude waitress to one of the FBI agents. You never know. You know, they just had something
exactly.
Well, they did the same thing to Mike Lindell, where they
true.
cornered him at a fast food joint where they were. I think they were in the drive-through.
Yeah.
And they cornered him.
Are you? Oh my God, that's
Yeah.
so. It is like
bastards.
It's creepy. It's comically evil. I can't help but laugh, even though this is very dark.
Yeah,
because this
that's
is
gallows
where
humor.
we are.
You can't write this stuff
in
into a
our
screenplay.
country.
It does. The reality is more humorous than, you know,
Yes.
a screenplay. It's
So
hilarious.
the FBI executed this man a day before they arrest the Whitmer guys, and we know now. The Detroit Free Press sued to get the autopsy report. They got that. It shows he has a bullet hole in his back, so they shot him in the back. And they never released
Surprise,
the FBI's
surprise.
internal
Yes,
affairs report
let me get
on
my surprise
the
face on.
use of force in this case. And that was something that I think the Detroit Free Press was also pursuing, trying to get, and they never got it. So the FBI can literally just execute people. And I think that this was done because I don't know if he knew people and maybe had some kind of knowledge that arrests were going to happen or that the FBI was infiltrating. I don't know. Maybe he was going to tip people off and they felt they had to execute him right before they arrest these guys. I'm interested to learn more about that myself, quite honestly.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So-
I mean, there's no better way than to eliminate the guy who's going to cause you the most problem than to a public execution. Another chilling effect. Another situation like that. What were you going to say, Tim?
Oh, just trying to remember. Did you ever finish answering the first question where we're at
She
so
did.
far? Okay, we got there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I will, I'll do that. Sorry. I know I go off on these tangents.
No, it's
because
great.
No, we
there's
love
so
it.
much
We love
And
it.
it's such an
information.
intriguing. I mean, I went to school for film and television. It's an intriguing story, but the reality of it is it's people's lives and crazy, ridiculous government
regular
actions.
people.
Yeah.
Just like you, like it could literally
No,
could be
nobody's
your
like me,
neighbor,
but yeah.
your brother, your uncle, your father.
Yep.
You know, that's literally who these guys were. So to answer again the first question and to wrap this up on the trials, they had the first show trial where the guys couldn't really introduce exculpatory evidence. They couldn't have people testify on their behalf because they were all threatened. And then there were certain things they couldn't bring in, like they couldn't talk about the misconduct of the 3 lead FBI handling agents in the case because the judge claimed it wasn't germane to the case.
Of course.
Whatever that means.
It means they're trying
which
to
is
trump it up, and
insane.
if you introduce that evidence, we can't get our conviction.
Yeah, and even still, so with all of these things working against these guys and the government having this, 98.9% conviction rate, they still lose this first trial. And 2 guys are acquitted, so they have to retry Adam and Barry. They use Judge Yonker again in this hasty retrial where they also want you to know they had a more diverse jury, whatever that means. And in the retrial, once again,
I hope it doesn't mean DEI retards.
No, it's a token gay black man. That's all.
Okay. Okay.
They couldn't introduce evidence. Again, they couldn't call witnesses. But then the government takes it a step further. And the Judge Yonker, imposes time limits on the defense when it comes to cross-examining key government witnesses, i.e. the guys who took the plea deal.
Like a Yahtzee sand timer? Like, okay, you have, and go.
No, like a baseball pitch.
Are you serious?
Yeah, you got like 15 seconds to throw.
To get the next
throw
piece of
ball,
evidence out.
Or you're done.
No, it wasn't that. Well, actually, it is pretty.
I mean, it's
it
that
is kinda
comical.
that bad, that comically evil. And
Yeah.
he cites what he calls the Bertelmann's rule, which is it was from if I remember correctly, a civil litigation case. So something that involved like multiple third-party defendants, right? So you could
It's
have
like-
100 third-party defendants in a massive civil litigation case that could be projected to last for several months.
Cross
And
between
so-
a slider and a screwball, basically.
yeah, like what they were trying to do in that case, and again, civil litigation, not a criminal case,
course.
was to make it so that the trial didn't last half a year. Okay.
Okay.
We don't have 100 third-party defendants. This also isn't a litigation case. This is a case where men's lives are on the line
Mhm.
and they're looking at life in prison. It's a criminal case. You cannot put time limits on only the defense when it comes to cross-examining key witnesses, citing this Bertelmann's rule, because the case itself was literally only projected to last 2 weeks. So a 2-week trial.
Wow.
The government already tried the case, so it's not like they even have to prepare, like they already know what happened the first time. I don't think they should be able to do these retrials, by the way. I think it's kind of
double jeopardy.
bypassing the double jeopardy thing
Right.
of why
Yeah.
you lost this trial. Why do you get to retry them? You just get to keep going, picking a different jury until you get the jury that gives you the answer
The
you
result
want.
you want.
That's not how this is supposed to work. But that's what they did. And the trial was not going over the projected time limit. Like they actually ended 2 days early from the projected 2 weeks. So
Okay.
there was no justifiable reason for this judge
Right.
to all of a sudden have this novel legal theory of imposing time limits in a criminal federal conspiracy case. That to me is egregious. And so that is one of the things that these guys are going to appeal. So, of course, with the government's ability to do that, and I also want to add Judge Yonkers helping the government along
Right.
while the defense was cross-examining the guys who took a plea deal, Caleb Franks. The judge is sitting there going, 5 minutes left.
Was
He's
it-
giving like a condescending countdown. He's
Right.
saying to the defense lawyer, do you really want to waste your time with this crap line of questioning? He's saying
Wow.
this in front of a
my
jury,
gosh. Of course.
disparaging the defense in the defense argument in the presence of a jury as he's literally shouting down a time limit on these people, and he's only doing this to the defense, not the prosecutors.
What-
They could spend 50 minutes cross-examining Caleb Franks. The
Right.
defense said they were given 25 minutes.
Was it a kind of twisted take on a right to his speedy and fair trial, where they're like,
No.
What, do you know what the statute was that he based his decision to do
Well, this
that on?
Bertelmann's
He cited the Bertelmann's
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 rule.
which is
Yeah.
It's a case law, right?
Okay.
From a civil litigation case. So
Oh, that's what you said. Yeah.
it's
Okay.
like,
But it's
why would it's a strange thing that even the prosecutors didn't make that. You would expect, okay, if they wanted to do this, that the prosecutors would make a motion saying, we want to introduce this. No, the judge is like coming up with this novel,
an obscure
legal
precedent.
obscure
Precedents,
precedent
yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
never been used in a criminal case before. That was also reported on by left-wing media. Even they were saying this is really weird, this Bertelmann's rule thing.
Yeah.
Like, haven't seen this used before, but then they still maintain these guys like did something. It's just like so stupid.
But yeah, these judges are basically, politically connected, unelected, unaccountable attorneys.
Well, yeah,
and
it's 100%.
They know every
They're
trick in the book
activists.
to get whatever end result that they want in these cases that will help the people who put them there, the people who they owe the favors to for getting them
100%
into that position. So the idea that there's some sort of impartial judiciary is completely asinine.
All of the judges and defense attorneys and prosecutors, by and large, all of them hang out together. They go golfing together. They do all their things together. So if you think you're going in there, my one son,
they drink adrenochrome together.
Of course.
Yeah.
As well they should.
Well, judges and defense attorneys, not so much. Probably the prosecutors.
Oh no, I know.
All of them. No, all of them.
them.
Because there are certain, like, I worked in the legal community in South Florida, and I remember lawyers I worked with talking about how they donate to this judge's reelection campaign, or they have these quid pro quo relationships with these people. And also, the legal community itself is very small. It's an insular community.
Sure.
These people, a lot of these prosecutors, before they become prosecutors, they're clerking for judges.
Of course.
Oh, maybe a judge they end up in front of when they're a prosecutor. Like, it's self-feeding community, and there isn't really, a lot of these public defenders, the court-appointed public defender, they are trying cases against the prosecutors. They know these people. They literally work with them every day, sort of like how you see in politics, like left-wing and right-wing politicians having their little public hearings, and they pretend to go after each other. They go, this one calls this one out, and they get
and then
their
they go
little
shoot 9
sound bite, and then literally right afterwards, as soon as the cameras are stopped rolling, they're like, oh yeah, great job, you really played that one up. They're going to get drinks together and laughing about how stupid everybody is that believes the little theater that they have going on.
It's
Well,
wrestling.
it's very similar to that in the legal community. So they get these guys, Adam and Barry, convicted in this retrial, which they have to do to try the state guys. So then we get the trial,
because that
in
sets a
Jackson.
precedent.
And that is Joe Morrison, Paul Beller, Pete Musico, and they are now able to say convicted terrorist Adam and Barry.
Right.
But the defense isn't allowed to say Daniel Harris and Brandon Caserta were acquitted. So the government is actually referring to Daniel and Brandon still as co-conspirators during the state trial, even though they've been acquitted. They're still pretending that they were part of the plot, and they're mentioning their names. They're showing videos of them, but the defense is prevented from saying, oh, by the way, that video, that guy you just saw, he was found not guilty.
Right.
But how is this? So it's not a real thing. These are not real trials.
They just want the narrative.
Complete BS. And then their final state trial, thank goodness I, talked to the guys in advance. I said, you better testify, because the court-appointed public attorneys for all of these men advise them not to testify on their own behalf.
Right.
That is, in my opinion,
stupid.
Almost like legal malpractice. I believe they literally walked those men into their lengthy prison sentences. And so the final state trial, there were 2 guys who took a plea deal from that, Brian Higgins and a gentleman named Sean Fix. Sean Fix was somebody who was pretending to be a fake Navy SEAL. And so,
he had some other stuff going on with him. What was the deal with Brian Higgins? He looks like an older gentleman by the photograph we have here.
Brian Higgins was not even from Michigan. He's a guy from Wisconsin that happened to be friends with the pedophile informant Steve Robeson, who was pretending to be the head of the Wisconsin chapter of a fake militia group created by the FBI called the Patriot 3 Percenters. Then throughout the course of the investigation, Robeson says he's become the national commander of the Patriot 3 Percenters. So Brian Higgins was somebody that was sort of like his IT guy, but not really. He was just somebody he knew and roped into the nighttime recon. That's literally the only, like, Brian Higgins wasn't in a militia.
He looks like my gym teacher.
He's not doing,
From high
he
school.
doesn't even, I don't think he even
Bottom
attended
right-hand-
any of the
bottom right
hand
hand corner for the bottom right hand corner for the viewing public.
Yeah.
All he did was attend a nighttime recon at the behest of his friend, and he was told they were going to hunt pedophiles.
Oh, wow.
And the reason he thought that this was legitimate is because Steve Robeson, the pedophile informant at this time, was representing himself as somebody who had a charity. This charity group, it wasn't real. It was called Race to Unite Races, a 501c3, and he was telling people that he was rescuing children from child traffickers. He would tell people stories about how he went down to Mexico with law enforcement to rescue children. Like, he's making people think he's like a Tim Ballard figure. So so these guys thought that he actually worked with police and law enforcement, and he's like, oh yeah, we're gonna go we're gonna hunt some pedophiles. So that's what Brian Higgins thought he was doing the night the FBI put on their nighttime recon.
Right.
So that's literally the only involvement he has in this. I don't know why he was charged, other than that the FBI is incredibly malicious. And
but it was his
awful
buddy
things.
that was running it.
Yeah, and threw him under the bus too after he himself got arrested.
I wonder, can we?
which is a long
Oh
story.
yeah. So his buddy got arrested.
Yeah, the
main
FBI arrested
FBI
their
guy.
own informant and charged him with something they knew he was doing because they wanted to prevent him from testifying potentially on the behalf of the defense at trial.
Okay.
So they actually
That makes
arrested
more
him,
sense.
charged him, and then they interrogated him. And in this interrogation, they coerced him into signing an NDA, and they tell him his house is being raided. It's an incredible listen. It's a 3-hour long, technically it's a 5-hour long recording, but only 3 hours have been released. This is due to the efforts of a local Michigan journalist, a man named Eric Von Dusen. He's a freelance videographer, but he did some work for The Intercept on this case, reporting on this case with Trevor Aronson, the guy who wrote the book, The Terror Factory, about the FBI basically setting up Muslims. And so he obtained this recording of this. It's a December 10, 2020 interrogation of the FBI, essentially doing a shakedown of their own informant. And it's amazing to listen to. In the trailer, you hear the agent Impala saying, we can throw everybody into chaos and disarray. That comes from the interrogation recording, where he's actually talking to the informant about how we can keep your name out of this so nobody knows that you were the one basically that set this up. And, we can throw the defense into chaos and confusion and make them think that someone else is the informant to get the heat off of you. So they're literally strategizing how to confuse the defense lawyers, and which is stunning to listen to. And then later on, the last part you hear in the trailer where he says, a saying we have in my office is, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Of course.
He's literally saying that to the informant. He's saying to him, listen, we don't want you testifying for the defense. A saying we have in my office is, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, right? And then he goes into this, we have 3 options for you. Option 1, you testify, people know your name, and then everyone knows you're a snitch, and that's not good for you. And then the second option is that you testify for the defense, and that's not good for us. Or the third option, the one we think you want, is you plead the fifth and you don't testify at all. And so they have him literally sign an NDA.
Wow.
This is insane.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is stuff that like the judge knew about, okay? The defense lawyers talked about what was said. And if you listen to the whole 3 hours, the FBI agents are saying, oh, this looks like entrapment because before the investigation begins, you're talking to Barry Croft online. You are the person that first mentions politicians being tyrants, and then Barry starts popping off at the mouth about, oh yeah, they should be strung up, whatever. But it's like, you are the person who is proffering this. It's not Barry's idea. He is not coming up with this. You're throwing things out there, and then because he's a truck driver and he's driving in a truck for 8 hours a day, he literally just talks on the phone the entire time, and he says crazy outlandish stuff. But it's not like, it isn't, none of this is planning a terrorist attack.
So
It's
does our
literally
Larry.
just
Our Larry
people
truck driver.
talking.
Yeah,
same thing.
We're thankful that Larry's face isn't up there. On
We're thankful Larry
15 charge.
isn't on us. Yeah, a
So
panel
we
of
do
16.
we do have a few people in the audience that think Larry is a Fed.
Well, they joke.
They joke that Larry's a Fed.
But those that are
so
joking in
funny.
chat, they're spooks. So that does,
that makes
Well,
makes
look,
sense.
some of the guys thought Barry was a Fed because of the way he talked.
So where does that put? Who's on appeal then? And
Okay.
and where are we at in the way of what's the next stage for some of these guys?
So 4 trials total.
Yeah.
That right now we have 5 men currently incarcerated. I should say there were 5 men acquitted.
We should send some gift baskets.
It's basically split down the middle right now. Half of these men have been acquitted by 2 different juries, not one, 2 different juries saw through the BS, even though the defense was so hamstrung.
Praise the
So
Lord.
right now we have 5 men currently wrongfully incarcerated.
Right.
Adam Fox and Barry Croft, the men framed as ringleaders, are in Florence Supermax right now.
Holy crap.
Barry is looking at 19 and a half years. He's a 50-year-old man. That's a death sentence for him. He'll never see his daughters again. He's a father of 4.
Right.
He has little girls he was raising by himself before the FBI did this. Those little girls are in the years they need their father, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. And then he has another daughter who's older. But that's not the point.
No.
These girls need their father. He
100%.
was raising them from the time they were born. The government gave them to their mother, who was a drug addict and was never part of their life. And she immediately starts taking them to pride parades, which is against how Barry raised these girls, which was to be Christian. And so this is the sick thing that they do. Barry at no point was a dangerous person. The FBI didn't even think he was dangerous. In fact, I have text messages between the FBI agents. So the agents who were assigned to Barry Croft is a gentleman named Christopher Long, Special Agent Christopher Long out of the Baltimore field office. I'm calling you out. You are a clown. He's an ex-Special Forces scumbag from Maryland. Then this is what the FBI does, by the way. The DC field office doesn't do the dirty work. It's outsourced to Maryland. Why do you think they wanted their new headquarters in Greenbelt, Maryland? That's where the dirty work is done.
Well, so it's easier to outsource.
Special Forces clown
Yeah.
he spent his time, fighting the global war on terror. He comes back. He's an FBI agent now, entrapping American citizens. So Christopher Long and Special Agent John Penrod, who used to be a trooper before becoming a Fed, that's a downgrade in my opinion. But I have text messages between Agent Long and John Penrod and the informant Jenny Plunk, who is a female informant they used to get close to Barry Croft in this case. And they're saying to her privately, they call Barry BH. That stood for bonehead. They called him moron, coward. They called him the P word. They said he was a pussy. And this is what they're saying this privately about him: coward, pussy, moron.
And didn't they call? They called Adam.
And then they say, for somebody who is itching for a fight, boy, does he seem to be a coward. So that's what they're saying privately. While publicly they're saying Barry is a domestic terrorist. He's a threat to the country. He wanted to overthrow the federal government. And it's just like, okay, but you guys were laughing about him. You were sitting there saying Barry's not going to do anything. And then in August, Barry is leaving the group. People think he's a Fed because of the way he talks. And you, the FBI, task your informant, Jenny Plunk, who is posing as the head of a Tennessee chapter of a fake militia group, with convincing people that Barry brought them together and that Barry has good ideas.
To prop him up
And
as
then,
a threat and an actual leader. Yeah.
Yeah, which is like ridiculous. And I want to say this too, that Barry was not even like in a militia group, okay? He was not a part of the Wolverine Watchman Michigan militia group. He is from Bear, Delaware. He wore the tricorn hat. He looked like a middle-aged pirate, you know, and he kind of saw himself as like a morale officer. The only video that they have of Barry doing anything with guns is he's literally doing the barrel training that at the FBI's Cambria, Wisconsin field training exercise. So they set up an obstacle course, had him run through it as an FBI videographer is literally filming it. And then they play this at court to make it look like, you know, these guys were planning something or doing
training
something.
as a militia. Yeah.
That is literally it. And
Wow.
because he knew his knees were bad, he leaves his gun there in Wisconsin. Like, he's like, you guys can have this for training. I'm too old to be a militia anyways. I'm more of like a morale person. That's what he saw his role as, because there were a lot younger guys that got caught up in all this stuff, you know, and he's an older man.
So this is
the FBI actually goes on a multi-state excursion to try to plant the gun back in Barry's vehicle so that they can then, you know, claim he had this gun and he wanted to do something with it.
Wow.
They actually had their Wisconsin informant drive the gun from Wisconsin to Delaware so they could try to plant it back on him. And once again, I believe he gave it back to
This was like
I think he gave it back to them.
It got back to him.
And do we have a price tag of like how much all this bullshit costs the taxpayer?
Oh, please.
Millions.
Millions.
We know that what we do know. So we don't have this a specific like itemized thing of like, you know, this was exactly what they spent, but we can do some deduction, right? So we can look at the case and see that this was a multi-state investigation that comprised multiple FBI field offices, from the Dallas field office to Baltimore to Indiana to Michigan to Wisconsin,
Thousands of man hours. Yeah.
Ohio to Ohio to, it's just insane. Okay. So this is, you're having to coordinate multiple field offices. We also know that from day one, this was opened as a terrorism enterprise investigation. This is the highest threat level
priority
investigation in the FBI tier 1 terrorism case, which is like reserved for you know, dangerous criminal. Like if you were having like a meeting of like the Mafia 5 families or something, you could see that being like a tier 1 terror case. But to investigate these guys that were rolling around in their backyard in Jackson County and to open this as a TEI, what that suggests is that the FBI knew from day one that they wanted a terror plot.
Right.
They
100%.
wanted to create some kind of terror plot.
Yep.
And so throughout the course of the investigation, we know that they utilized things like multiple recording devices on multiple informants. They had drones flying overhead at like 6,000 or 7,000 feet, following people around. Aerial surveillance is probably quite expensive. They also had planes flying at 15,000, 20,000 feet, following Barry around as he's driving his truck. You know, for 9 months, they investigate him as he doesn't commit any crimes.
No,
you know.
Of course not.
It's so they dumped tons. I would say it was in the millions wasted on this utter nonsense.
Well, they met with the shooter down in Texas, Vivaldi shooter. I think there were 46 some odd incidences or reports on this kid. You have the guy at the golf course down there trying to take Trump out. They knew about him. He had a weapons of mass destruction charge. He had a whole bunch of stuff. He was unemployed, but had 2 houses. He was recruiting for there was a third, but I'm talking about the second one.
Oh, yeah.
The first kid, they knew about him. He was on their radar, but these guys, they're the bad ones. They're the ones that are being entrapped in this. And yet every time one of these actual shooters comes out, the FBI's had multiple interactions with them, not coercing them, doing interviews with them, and they're the ones who are actually committed. But the difference is that these mass shooters fit the narrative that they already want, which is more terror. And these guys were true right-wing patriots to the best of their ability and their intellect, just trying to live out their lives, doing their things. They're not perfect people. None of us are, but they weren't what they've been made out to be in the press and in the court, obviously.
And these guys are the core of the movement that needs to be put down by the feds for them to have their globalist New World Order type system.
100%.
And I do have a question for Christina. You talked about PatCon. Can you talk about the genesis of PatCon and how the feds, started running operations to entrap and ensnare, patriotic right wingers as domestic terrorists?
Yes. Briefly, I want to give some background on the inception of the FBI. I believe from their inception, the FBI has always been kind of like a political police force, if you will. J. Edgar Hoover, he was well known for collecting like blackmail, right, on politicians.
Everybody.
That's what he did, right? So from day one, the FBI, the entire idea that we need a federal police force is ridiculous when we have local and state law enforcement.
It's
we needed it
unconstitutional.
ostensibly to fight, organized crime like the mafia. Well, how many of these mafia people ended up working with American intelligence? We
Whitey
actually
Bulger.
know that they did. Exactly. So there's sort of this symbiotic relationship almost from the beginning with the FBI and organized crime. And so there's that. Now, the FBI, I think everybody has heard of COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO is sort of like the left-wing version of PatCon, if you will. So this was from the 60s, where the FBI was targeting what they called the New Left. And they were doing the same kinds of things, right? Like we know there was an informant in the Weather Underground, It's very interesting, right? Although he was portrayed as the good guy that kind of blows the whistle on the group, it's just like, well, the group was penetrated, though. How did it become so radical? I'm just saying. So we know that COINTELPRO, the FBI was targeting anti-war left-wing groups and with this intention in mind, to radicalize them and then use that to arrest these people and to defang and neutralize dissent. That's what that goal was. So everyone knows that. That's well known. What is less well known is that the FBI did this to right-wing, what they called Christian identitarians in the 90s. So go back to the 80s. There's an organization called The Order, which legitimately was like a sort of like a white supremacist group. And they did carry out an act of terror. They killed a Jewish radio broadcaster. I forget his name. I think it may be Alan Berg. I could be wrong on that detail.
Sounds right.
They made a movie about that.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yep, I forget the name. New? I think it was called Talk Radio in the 1980s. It was really good. Oliver Stone
okay.
movie.
Yeah.
I was born in '88, so bear with me.
Just a kid.
So this
just
group,
a
The
kid.
Order exists, though, right? And basically, what they wanted to do is PatCon was ostensibly created to kind of like prevent, according to the FBI, the reemergence of the Order, right? So they took down the Order, and then the FBI is saying, listen, the Order's been taken down. Now there's a power vacuum. They're concerned about the Order reemerging or reestablishing itself. So what do they decide to do? Let's create our own version of the Order, basically.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Oh, in order to prevent terrorists, let's become terrorists.
Right.
Like that's the thinking here, is in order to prevent the Order from reemerging, is we basically become the Order. So they created a group called VAM, Veterans Aryan Movement. And
really?
Yeah, so this is like
basically
the
controlled opposition model.
Yes, exactly. And they created their own militia group, and they were targeting a group called the Texas Light Infantry. So they already had an idea of like, hey, we want to target this group, but they were targeting basically veterans, militia groups, and then the Christian identitarians. And so PatCon, allegedly, this is from an FBI informant who blew the whistle on PatCon, a gentleman named John Matthews, who's gone into hiding. He claims that there were multiple PatCon operations. So the FBI claims PatCon ended in 1993. I don't believe that for a second. John Matthews says that Ruby Ridge, Waco, and Oklahoma City were all PatCon operations. Okay. And he said there was more, that there was like PatCon 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to like 20. Okay. So that is basically the history of PatCon. Is unlike COINTELPRO, that FBI operation to infiltrate the left, that led to criminal cases and prosecutions. So the existence of COINTELPRO became known, right, as those cases went to trial. With PatCon, that wasn't the case. It didn't lead to prosecutable crimes like they wanted it to. So the FBI basically infiltrated the Christian identity movement and the militia movement and white supremacist movement, and then they just stayed embedded in these groups. And we didn't even hear about PatCon. We didn't even learn of its existence until 2007. Think about that. It was very closely guarded inside the FBI, which is also very telling and concerning. And so that's PatCon in a nutshell, is that the FBI wanted to do COINTELPRO aimed at the right, and this involved the FBI creating militia groups, infiltrating groups, and then that not really leading to anything. And so I guess you start to wonder, well, so how much of these groups are organic, or how long has the FBI been inside these groups, shaping, their outlook and whatnot? I find that very concerning. And then, of course, when we look at the Whitmer case, and the FBI creating the Patriot 3%ers, it lines exactly with what they were doing during PatCon.
And the feds need to have these boogeymen. They need to have these external threats, because if they don't have them, then their budgets are going to dry up. There's going to be no
100%
need for these bureaucracies. So that's why you see them get involved with PatCon, with all these militia type groups, take them over, radicalize them, have that threat there that they can always rely on when they need to scare the public to demand more funds. And they've done it, like I said earlier, with the Muslim terrorists. If you look at, the U.S. government supporting the Mujahideen and bin Laden in the 80s, supporting Saddam Hussein in the 80s, and they become the boogeymen later. And then, given arms to ISIS and other terror groups in Syria. So this is the same bullshit they always do.
We're empowering both sides of the Ukraine conflict. We're empowering both sides of the Israeli conflict.
Literally $1 trillion scam.
Well, and so I was going to say this earlier, and I want to get Christina's take on this, that really, to get inside the thinking of the FBI, the rank and file guys on the ground are fed this line, this idea that, well, if we don't go into these organizations and weed out the people that would eventually do this, then we're not doing our job. We know that they're going to do this eventually. We're just giving them a nudge. We're giving them a push. We're just helping them follow their natural course a little bit ahead of time. We know that they're bad people. We know they're going to do this anyways. That tends to be the ground guys, the guys that are doing this.
Their justification in their
That's
heads.
their justification in their heads. And then what you just said, Shane, is that the guys above, they're just looking at the budget. They're like, look, we've got to maintain this. We got to maintain our conviction rate. We got to maintain, our budget coming in. So I need you guys out there finding these guys. Then you bump back to the rank and file guys that are going, well, we know these people are, a bunch of militia terrorists anyways, so let's just go in there and rile them up, and we'll have our convictions, and we'll keep our budget going, and we'll take some of these bad patriot people off the street, because they're eventually going to do this shit anyway, so we might as well.
It'd be one thing to have an infiltrator who got it, if there's a violent extremist group, you send in someone to gather intel about this group.
Correct. Which is what
to
they
build a case.
Which they used to do.
That is what should be done in
Correct.
cases like that. But they go above and beyond.
The minute they flip from
everything.
the minute they flip from gathering intel to inciting action, they've lost the moral high ground if there was a moral high ground. Christina, are you seeing with all the research that you're doing specifically on this, but all the other things you do as an independent journalist, are you seeing that dynamic come forth? Because I know with my friend that was convicted, the 2 FBI agents that were the head of his particular case were actually misty-eyed in tears when he got convicted, because they had worked with him so much and knew my friend that when he actually got sentenced to 8.5 years, they were,
devastated.
Their hearts were broken for this guy that they'd worked with, obviously on the other side of the aisle. But he sat there and said, "I'll tell you what you want." He had a proffer agreement. They lost, which was points to cut down on your amount of sentencing, all that stuff. So I just wonder from your perspective, these two takes, the money at the top and the twisted justification in their minds at the bottom. Are you seeing some of that in your research as you're going through this, or do you have a different take?
No, I think that's probably true. In fact, I think that they train these agents, when they go through their training, to think a certain way, to view people as, enemy combatants. That's the most striking thing to me from what I see in the FBI is how much they think like a military officer in a foreign war. They actually view Americans as potential enemy combatants, and they're always looking for the quote insider threat. They're told that the greatest threat is these white supremacist, right-wing domestic terrorists. That's what they're trained to believe. And I think a lot of these agents that are young, inexperienced, and don't know better probably do fall for that. Now, I would suggest in the Whitmer case, that is not the case with any of those agents. Every single one of them was corrupt. Now, the agents that the FBI actually brought in to testify about certain things, like they brought an agent in to testify about a firework Barry bought, a presidential firework that he taped pennies to and then detonated, that the FBI called an IED. They actually had a young agent make a reconstruction video. So they bought their own firework and then taped pennies to it and then detonated it and then showed, oh, this is what it might have looked like. Like, it's insane. But that person that testified about Barry's receipt and where he bought the firework, this is a young agent. Like, they're young, inexperienced, and I think they don't know how they're being used at that point. But for somebody like Jason Chambers or Richard Trask or Henrik Impola, the actual handling agents in this case,
those are the money guys.
I don't believe that they even for a minute thought these men were a threat, or that like, oh yeah, we got to do this for the greater good. Like, they're literally, well, I don't want to say, because I'll save it for the documentary, but they knew what they were doing, and they knew exactly who they were doing it to, and they knew these guys were harmless.
Well, and I think that's the case, is to get, and you bring up the great third point, is you've got these compromised people, you've got the evil ones that are just following the money and doing that stuff, and they'll convict whoever, because they're going to jump, like this one guy jumps from Michigan to DC, and then he ends up in Mar-a-Lago, and now he's doing private stuff. It's like they're just jumping from whatever money's going to pay, and their conscience is obviously seared with a hot iron, so they don't have any sense of morality or
I believe that they have an elitist mindset, because they're told that they're the world's premier law enforcement agency. They train them at Quantico. They make them think they're better than everybody else. They already think that they're superior because they have a gun and a badge. And they often, in many ways, are very privileged. They make more money than the average person. They get government pensions and health care. And so I think they look down on the rest of us. And I also believe they have in their mind that I work for the government and can do what I want, and I think too, this is also, I believe that the FBI, when they are selecting people of who's going to be promoted in the FBI, I believe they actually want people and target people who have sociopathic traits, people
100%.
who won't ask questions, people
100%.
who don't care to ask questions. They just want to get paid.
Yeah.
And I think those are the people, because like the example, Richard Trask, the man who signed off on the criminal complaint in this case, this is the only person who was actually violent and committed a crime during the course of the investigation. He beats his wife and tries to strangle her.
Yeah, she wouldn't perform at a sex party.
Yes, after taking her to a swingers party in Kalamazoo, ostensibly, in my opinion, to celebrate the big terror case that they just got. So then you start asking questions of, okay, so these FBI agents at high levels like this, they're having swingers parties. Is that not an opportunity for blackmail, even by foreign agents, right? You could have somebody working for China come, to one of these swingers party, and then they videotape you, then they have this tape of you, so it creates this like there's questions of like, could these people be blackmailed, these agents? Why are they engaging in this behavior? Then I start thinking, is this what other FBI agents do to celebrate big cases? And were other agents at this party? Were they like, what was the purpose of this? It's just very bizarre, but that's the kind of person who works at the FBI. Somebody who will then beat and strangle his wife because she didn't want to be a degenerate. And then they think that they're superior to these men who were doing nothing except legal defensive firearms training, medical training, what have you, as the FBI takes them on, these excursions during the summer of 2020. So I don't think that I tend to think that the FBI shouldn't exist. And I also
100%.
believe that these agents who have participated in this stuff should face prosecution. I think the fact that they've gotten away with it for so long creates, again, that air of elitism inside the agency of we're untouchable. We can do whatever we want. We can beat our wives and nothing will happen to us. That is, in my opinion, disturbing. And I would suggest that the lack of people coming forward to blow the whistle, nobody associated with this case except Steve Friend has come forward to blow the whistle on the FBI. Like none of these agents have come forward to admit what they did, why they did it. No, they don't care.
They don't care.
The whole system's rotten to its core, and I don't think there's any reforming it. I think it just needs to be defeated, and when I don't even know how what it would take.
It's so embedded.
But after, there needs to be some sort of Nuremberg trials with these people
100%
facing
100%. And you're right.
It being on a scale of where no one can deny that these people are just total scum criminals.
Exactly. Well, and Christina, you said it that there's very few whistleblowers coming forth, and I think that's in that real small group of FBI who thought that they had the moral high ground trying to go in here and just we already know people are going to do stuff. But I think you're right. The vast majority of them are the money guys or the guys that are completely compromised. I mean, that's what they like to do, and it's from the foundation of the FBI, as you pointed out, and we've talked about on the show before about Hoover was compromised himself, so his business, his stock and trade was compromised. If you're, I'm going to get, how does he stay in power as a homosexual throughout the time from the start of the FBI until he dies? How does he stay in power that long as a homosexual in the climate?
Cross-dressing too.
Cross-dressing.
Like a cross-dressing homosexual.
Yeah. How does he stay in power that long without somebody compromising him? Well, he had dirt on everybody else, and they went after it. I think that's that. I want to shift and do a couple other things, but I want you to point this out. So you want to go to knkfilms.com. That's where we want to help fund the film, right? And I wanted to ask
knkfilm.com. It's the letter K, ANDK film.com.
Yep. I've got it up behind me, and we'll put it up on the screen here in just a second. But so where I don't know how much more time we want to go. Are doing all right?
I gotta wrap it up here pretty soon.
Okay. All right.
I gotta get my daughter to bed.
I understand that. So we'll put that up on the screen. Let me ask two questions real quick. One, how much time does it take to do a documentary? That's one thing we want to do that. And then how much more time? I know you talked about it in the trailer that you've got, there's more editing to be done. There's a musical score to put up there. There's a whole bunch of things.
Yeah. What do you need?
Yeah. We're looking at what do you need to finish up, and then how much time for an hour and a half, 2 hour documentary, how many hours and hours of time do you put in? How many hours of footage do you put in? You're smiling. I like that. But how much, there's so much work. And as you're sitting here, I don't think you really have a lot of notes in front of you. So the vast majority of everything you're sharing is from your heart, because this material you're living and breathing it, and you're
you're
tied to it. And so how much time does it take, and how much time do you have left?
Well, I'll just say it takes a lot of time and a lot of resources. You know, when I first started this, like I said, my background is a paralegal and then an independent journalist. So somebody who's literally just myself at my house writing articles and talking and putting up videos. I didn't have a production company or anything, no experience in filmmaking.
Okay.
I have experience in, content creation and some editing, but I have a fantastic cinematographer and I have a great editor. So like when this first,
I can tell
it even came about, right? Like when Brandon got acquitted, I interviewed him because I had reported on the case. And then from talking to him, I realized there was so much I didn't know. I wanted to do a documentary, and I initially was going to just focus on the federal case, right? So the 6 guys who were charged federally. And I wasn't even going to cover the state stuff because it hadn't happened yet at that point. But it also was sort of like less people were focused on that. And I thought it was a lot just to tell that story of the 6 guys,
right?
And those are the main people that I think people associate with the cases. Those 6 guys from the federal trial. Many people don't even know about the 8 other guys that were charged at the state level. But just so I interviewed Brandon, and we did one interview. We used that to cut a trailer, our first trailer that we actually put out last year. I used that to fundraise to go. Again, I live in Virginia. I don't live in Michigan. So I've had to make multiple trips to Michigan for interviewing the different. And again, these guys are all up and down the state of Michigan. Right. So I had to travel to different places in Michigan. And then there's family members of these guys. So it's a lot of work. And it requires numerous trips, basically. Then I also had to interview 20 different people across 8 different states because people don't know about the unindicted co-conspirators, what their stories are. And I also need, it's like you got to travel to locations of interest, and they happen to be across the entire Midwest. And again, people don't know about that because they don't even know that this was supposed to be a multi-state plot where they wanted people to attack governors at the same time. They wanted it to look like militia groups on their own organically came together to organize and plan. And the whole purpose of this, by the way, is to criminalize militia activity. And we even see now a bill that was proposed by 2 Democratic congressmen called the Preventing Private Paramilitary Activity Act of 2024, which literally seeks to criminalize what these guys were doing. So there's that.
Didn't even know that.
So it's a lot of work, right, to tell this story. It requires so much resources. We put out this second trailer because we had, gone to Michigan multiple times. I've also attended hearings for the guys in Michigan. And so I'm traveling not just to film, but to cover what's happening at these hearings and to be there for that, for the guys. So that's a lot. And then interviewing all these people, there's still a lot more that needs to be done. It's such a massive story, and there's so much footage, just the footage. I have 30 terabytes of footage.
30 terabytes.
I can relate.
Yeah, well, because both state trials lasted 2 weeks. So that's a lot of footage from those trials. And then for the federal trials, those aren't televised. So I only have transcripts, and I have hundreds of pages of transcripts that I have to find a way to visually
represent
into so
have somebody
requires a lot
voiceover
of
or something like that.
Yes. And then they've also made my job difficult because as I was interviewing Adam and Barry for the documentary while they were in Newaygo County, they literally moved them to Supermax to prevent their participation and to shut down their participation in the documentary.
Of course.
I put out a statement that Barry made for the weaponization committee. I published it, and the next day, Adam and Barry were both moved to Supermaxes across the country. So this is the kind of thing they do, and that's made it very difficult for me to even be in contact with them. So there's all of that. Then I have a whole box of Barry's handwritten notes from the trials that he, gave to me to help tell his side of the story. So there's a lot of that. It's massive amounts of footage, data. It really requires a team to assemble and put
So you're saying
together.
prayer. You need
And
a lot
so
of prayer.
we need a lot of prayer. We put out the second trailer to try to meet my fundraising goal, which would help me hire the people I need to help me get it out quickly, because these men have zero faith in the appeals courts. Like Adam and Barry, they're appealing at the Sixth Circuit. We're still waiting to hear from the Sixth Circuit if they're going to be granted a new trial. The state guys have it even worse. First of all, they could be incarcerated until 2063.
Oh, wow.
Shit.
And because
Joe
they're state,
Morrison.
the Trump can't do anything about that as far as a
They
pardon.
can't be pardoned.
Yeah. Only
Yeah,
a good
because it's
governor,
not
which we don't
federal.
have. She's at the core of this.
And you know,
Exactly.
you look at what's happening with movies like Sound of Freedom and What Is a Woman
Yeah.
or whatever, or Am I a Racist? These movies
Yeah.
are making millions and millions of dollars, huge
Yeah.
profits
But
behind
they
it.
have big production companies behind them and massive
Right.
resources behind them. And I'll
Yep.
just say, I think all those films are great, but 10 years from now, like, is anyone going to remember Am I a Woman? Like, it's like one of those things that's important, but there's innocent men in prison, like
Right.
actual lives on the line.
Yeah.
In this case, there are children who've had their fathers ripped from them,
Yep.
who are currently without their dad.
Yep.
Joe Morrison, he's a young guy, like he's in his 20s. He's got 2 kids. They arrested him and his father-in-law, Pete Musico. So that family lost both men in their household. They lost their dad and their grandfather. So they have no more men in the house, and their women had to start working to support the family, which they
Right.
never had to do before. Then they have the additional financial burden of the entire prison system and how the Bureau of Prisons works.
Oh, it's
and
horrible.
the way that these state guys had been set up. So on the eve of their appeals, they were moved from MDOC facilities to federal Bureau of Prison facilities across the country. They sent Joe to Pekin, Illinois. They sent Paul to Minersville, Pennsylvania, and they sent Pete to FCI Gilmer in West Virginia. By the way, we just found out they're turning FCI Gilmer into a pen. So Pete's going to be like in a penitentiary now. He's not been
Wow.
charged federally. Why is he in a federal prison? Why has he not been brought back to Michigan for his appeal? Why
Because-
is his
yeah.
lawyer not making filings or joining the filings with the other 2 lawyers of his so-called co-defendants? They basically shut him up and basically buried him underground, and nobody hears from him.
Right.
No one gets to hear from Adam and Barry hardly. The BOP drains their commissary. That's another thing. Or like
Oh,
when
wow.
I've put money on their commissary, they just hold it. They don't give it to them, and then they don't refund the money to me. And
Yep.
they say that I have ties to extremism. I have no idea what that means.
That means
or
you're
what
pointing
they're
out the truth.
talking
That's
about.
extreme.
Exactly. That's literally all it means. And so they do these horrible things. Like, these families have suffered so much. Not only did they lose the men in their lives who are literally innocent, literally didn't do anything,
Mhm.
but then they have this horrific financial burden on them. Like, if Adam's mom doesn't pay $250 every single month into his commissary for his fines, he doesn't get to have his commissary items. He's in a supermax prison under lockdown 23 hours a day. He has anxiety and depression that he takes medication for, and he needs to be able to have something. He doesn't have anybody that visits him. He's in Colorado in a supermax. His family doesn't live in Colorado. Why did they send them to supermax prisons? What is the justification for Adam and Barry being there? Adam had no criminal record. Nobody tried to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. Like, an attempt wasn't even made.
Right.
Nobody even tried to do it. And then the FBI swooped in to stop it. That didn't happen. Nobody wanted to kidnap her.
Right.
It's so dark and disgusting. So the resources, it's a lot to tell the story. It's a big burden on these families of these individuals. And it's hard to tell the story when it's hard to contact these people, or when they keep moving them around, making it so that they can't speak to their lawyers, or when they do, and they're supposed to have privileged attorney-client phone calls. The FBI is monitoring these phone calls.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the 5 men who have been acquitted, they're still facing persecution in other ways. They get a job, they pass an initial background check, and then they get fired from their job. Is the FBI making a phone call? Who is behind organizing and orchestrating all of these things happening to them since they've been acquitted?
Right.
And it's literally every single time. How come not one lawyer, one constitutional lawyer on our side, is willing to go up against the FBI in a civil suit? You have 5 men who were acquitted of egregious government misconduct.
Right.
They should be able to sue the government for not only restitution, like Brandon spent 18 months in prison, he lost his apartment, they destroyed his vehicle, like they do horrible things to you, and then they don't have to compensate you. I don't
ridiculous.
think so. And
Yeah.
so not one lawyer has the balls to represent these men and go up against the FBI. You want to know why? Because they're scared.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why, because they're cowards or clowns, and they don't care because they're part of the entire sham legal system.
Yeah, because they get paid no matter what.
They're officers of the court.
Yeah,
you
they
know?
get paid no matter what. They get paid whether their client goes,
And yeah, my
goes free or
point,
goes
my
to
point
jail.
about Sound of Freedom and what is a woman or whatever is that it shows that there's a huge market for
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
these sort of stories to be told. So
100%.
we're gonna, when it's out, we're gonna definitely have a lot of different screenings throughout the state.
Well, even before Trejo, I think maybe she needs a Michigan-based production house to help her out with some of.
Well, and I would like to do a
her
screening.
interviews.
I'd like to do a screening here at the Man Cave. We've got a 23-foot screen, so
Well,
Yeah, we could.
before
I
that.
mean,
So cool.
screening
Yeah.
and fundraising needs to happen, and we need
Yeah.
to get the grassroots
Basically,
groundswell
in order to
behind
get
this
this
behind this
film
movie. But go on.
completed,
Yeah.
and to we won't sacrifice like quality standard, and I'm also not sacrificing part of the story, unfortunately,
Right.
because it's such a complex, big story. There's so many different people involved. They come in at different times. Think about 14 men, 20 unindicted
Oh, yeah.
co-conspirators, their family members, their children. Like that's a lot,
yeah,
lot
it's
of
huge.
interviews, a lot of stuff to put together.
Yeah.
So it may even have to be more
Part
than
2?
one film. Like
Yeah.
there may have to be a sequel, or it may have to be a actual mini series. And we
Right.
would love for it to be picked up by some kind of streaming platform where it can be shown to as many people as possible.
A
And
series, yeah,
frankly,
yeah.
the quality that we're going for is like a Netflix, HBO
Sure.
quality of like what you would see there.
Sure.
And I
100%.
hope that that's reflected in that second trailer, that that's the goal. And so right now we basically need post-production costs.
Yeah.
We foresee, needing to license archived news material and also music, because I know any way they
Mhm.
can go after me legally or for technicalities, they will.
Yep.
So in advance of like, I need to make sure everything on this is
Yep, I'm familiar.
perfect, 100% in
Oh,
this film. There's no production company that's giving me a budget. I literally had to fundraise from regular people, just people who are out there listening as I go on and do interviews.
Mhm.
And that's how we've gotten this far. Now, most of the work is done. There's a few more things we need to do for B-roll, a few more places we need to travel, but that's it. Most of it is already done. We just need to get our post-production costs. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
need to meet my full fundraising goal so I can pay my editor, hire him an assistant, because we need to get this out like soon. These guys
100%.
can't wait. They don't believe the Sixth Circuit is, the end all be all, right? Because what if they don't vote in their favor? They never had a
Yeah.
chance to tell their stories. They didn't get to testify at trial. They were told not to. For
Right.
the state guys, if Trump gets in, they can't be pardoned, and they don't trust that they can only appeal up to the Michigan Supreme Court. And
Which
like
is
the state
mostly
of
left.
Michigan's the so-called victim in your case. Do you really think any of these people are going to give these guys a chance? You think
No.
any judge whose boss is Whitmer is going to come on? They shouldn't even be adjudicating this case or handling the appeal, but here we are, and they've been tampering with these appeals. So these guys are counting on this film coming out soon in a way that it could potentially positively impact the legal system, because unfortunately in America, You are convicted in the court of public opinion by the media on day one before any evidence comes in, and then you have to actually prove your innocence. The government doesn't have to prove you're guilty. You're assumed guilty, and then you have to show that you're innocent. So one thing that I believe that if the film goes out and it gets out to enough people and it is seen by enough people, I think just that public acknowledgement and public pressure could pressure the courts enough to do the right thing.
Right.
But it's shameful in America that in a case like this, we're in the position that we have to do something like this just to get the courts to do the right thing, to say, hey, we're watching you and we're documenting what you're doing. Every way you violated their rights, it's all documented and you're being exposed. It literally takes that to get these people to do the right thing and do their jobs. And that's sad.
It is sad. It's the parable of the unjust judge. You know, it's going to take badgering the hell out of them and putting them on blast, putting them on public display before they finally, you know, that parable, it says, because I don't fear God and I don't fear men, but this woman won't leave me alone. So I'm going to grant her justice. And literally that's, you know, that's what we have to do. That's why when Shane contacted me, he says, you want to have Christina back on? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, in a heartbeat. And then saw you on InfoWars. I'm like, yeah, we got to get this funded and get this out there. We'll talk off air, Christina, if there's, I got a couple ideas that Tim and I are definitely stewing on right now as we're talking, if we can help, speed the process along. But I know that now, are you, this last question, you're working directly with your editor, obviously, to say, you know, I mean, he's doing the editing.
I'll be his assistant. I'll do it right now.
But he's, I would say he's, you know, you're probably right there in his ear with him going, you know what, I really want this in there. I really want that in there, or anything like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Cause I'm the person that like knows the story pretty much better than anybody, I would suggest, besides the lawyers, but in some cases, even more than them, because I've followed all of the cases, all of the trials, and some of them didn't get a chance to follow all of it. So it's been really weird just knowing that like that's a thing, you know. I know it's like weird for somebody to spend all of their time on this, but this is all I've done for the past few years, is literally just this. I mean, I've been able to talk about a couple other things, but it's basically taken over my life. So
yeah, it becomes consuming.
I'm in there.
Well, that's why I said that the start of the top of the show, it becomes your passion, and then it becomes consuming, and it becomes, there's too many stories out there where people, where they get involved in something like this, and then it just takes over their life, as you said, and it just begins to become all consuming. And it's a passion project. It's not something that you're, you know,
like I didn't go into this thinking I'm going to make money with the documentary. I went into it thinking we're going to fundraise this, crowdsource the money, which will basically pay to get it done and get it out. And then I don't foresee like making a profit from it. That's not the goal. And when something like this, like my family has dumped thousands of dollars into this. I'm doing it because I initially, going into it, wasn't sure. You know, I wanted to know myself how bad the entrapment was. I wanted to know it when I was interviewing the guys, if they were telling me the truth, if they were lying to me. So I didn't initially like believe them completely. And it wasn't until I went on the process and the journey that I realized, number one, they were telling the truth and how bad it was.
Yeah.
And then I just feel compelled kind of by God to make sure that this doesn't stand, because it isn't even about these men, like it is, and I feel for them as people.
But it could be any one of us tomorrow.
More the fact that that this could be like, this could be my husband, this could be my father, this could be you tomorrow, this could be me tomorrow. That is why I feel compelled to get the truth out there about this. And I don't like injustice, and I as a Christian, I feel like, you know, Jesus, like, he was falsely accused first. He was wrongly imprisoned first.
100%.
Would you be the person that didn't go and visit him? Would you be the person that didn't clothe or feed him? Would you look away? Would you deny him? And I don't want to be a person who looks away.
100%.
And I'd like to add one final thing, is that you know, I was proud to host the alleged, you know, fake kidnapper, a few of them who were acquitted, at the Grand New Party Pack Washington Day dinner. Christina was there. There's some incredibly moving testimony from them.
Their speeches were awesome.
Up there with their families.
Yeah.
That was incredibly moving. I really hope that include. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a lot, but I really hope that would be included in the documentary because it was just so powerful, and so riveting. And I've been doing this for a long time, 12 years, and helping to humanize those people, getting them out there in front of the public.
These are real people,
so that they aren't, because there's so many cowards on the right, so many cowards who are conservatives, and they just want to sweep this under the rug. Oh, those are militia people. I don't want to be associated with them. Oh, they were dumbasses. Blah blah blah. That's 90% of the movement. They're willing to just throw them in the dirt because of their own reputation, their own money interests.
Oh, I even hear Mike.
It makes me sick. So I'm happy to fight through that, and thank you for all that you do, Christina.
Yeah, I even hear some of the people that I really admire as far as podcasters or talk shows, and they'll still say tongue in cheek, these guys, these stupid idiots, they got, they shouldn't have been. I'm like, dude, have you actually looked at the case?
Like, you don't know shit about the case. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
These were not idiots.
These guys should have known something, or they were stupid or did something wrong. Bullshit. I've attended, different rallies and events as a journalist, and I've heard worse talk, at those places than I see it in the pages here of the Discovery and what these guys said.
100%.
And then again, intoxicated drunk talk is not evidence of overt acts taken in furtherance of a criminal conspiracy. There's nothing any of these guys did where you could show they were actually planning some kind of attack. There's nothing.
No charge on the federal agents for supplying them weed, even though weed is still technically illegal federally and class 1.
No charges.
No
on
charges
the,
there.
Agents who provided ounces of marijuana to these people, got them drunk, and then recorded them making intoxicated utterances, which aren't supposed to be allowed to be used at court because you're in an altered state of consciousness. Therefore, it's not really indicative of your natural disposition. So it's actually tainted evidence. They allowed, of course, tainted evidence to be used in this case.
Of course.
Manufactured evidence, planted evidence. They admitted to planting a bag of what they called explosive materials on Barry Croft so they could, quote, seize it later when they arrested him.
Of course.
So it makes me very angry when I hear people on our side talk about these men in disparaging ways,
right?
Or because they're not fancy, they don't look good, they're not pretty. They happen to be in many cases poor, working class. They don't look glamorous, and they had that rough talk, working class. Machinist from Detroit like Brandon with the big gauged ears and neck tattoos. They don't look sympathetic.
Right.
Some of them look like, they kind of look scary, like the Null brothers, the big twins. And, they were basically like the government was doing central casting here.
Right.
So it just, I think, shows the superficiality and the ignorance on the part of a lot of people on our side that they look at men like this and they think I'm better than them, or they assume that they're somehow low class or stupid or uneducated. This is not true at all. It couldn't be further from the truth. And what I would say to those individuals is when it happens to you, you would hope to God there was somebody like me on your side willing to get the truth out.
100%. 100%. Speaking of getting the truth out, help fund the film, KandKand film.com.
Love that logo. It makes it real easy to read.
Yeah, KNK. And I know you said something, I think it was that one interview with InfoWars, you said, we couldn't do Kidnap and Kill film.com because or kidnapandkill.com because that would not come off right. So
be a little bit weird.
It'd be a little weird.
Let's go to kidnapandkill.com. I don't think anyone wants to type that into
They don't want to type it. Now, are we looking to do a limited or even a wide, if that opens up, theatrical release on this? I know you said you're looking at streaming platforms, but you're open to a full-blown theatrical?
We want that. Like, I want this distributed as widely as possible to as many people as possible. I would love to reach out to the Angel Studios people who did that Sound of Freedom movie to let them know, hey, there's I think a project you might be interested in, because it's like, this isn't about me or anything. It's about
It's about getting the truth out.
them have their voices heard by
Right,
as many
100%.
people as possible. However, we can make that happen.
I'm
So
telling ya.
we're completely open to any kind of distribution like that
Yep,
by
yep.
you know, with a
Yep.
theatrical release. In fact, we want this film played in Michigan. I
100%.
want Whitmer to have to know that in theaters across her state,
Yep.
she's being exposed, along with her buddy Dana Nassel.
Oh, they're both, all three of
That's
our Secretary of State, our Attorney
Yeah.
General, and our Governor, all nasty
Mhm.
pieces of work. KandKFilm.com. Christina, you've been awesome, giving us so much time tonight, hanging out with us. Really appreciate it. You've got to come back. You know, Shane and I'll coordinate with you. Tim and I'll get with you and Shane off
Camera.
air, and
Yep. You want to hang in the
yeah.
this room, and after we sign off, or contact us later.
I know you
Bill.
got to take care of your daughter. Did you want to?
Yeah. What's the family? Yeah, husband, kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Husband, daughter.
Nice.
Awesome. What's
Nice
now?
game.
I got to know this before I let you go. What is the pinball game?
Yes. What is that pinball game?
Oh, okay. This is a 90s Adams Family pinball.
Oh, I love
machine.
Adams
that pinball
Family,
game.
okay.
I love it.
The 90s Adams Family.
90s
the,
Addams
the
Family.
best pinball machine.
Oh, I
I
bet.
played it. I love it.
I love it. Yeah,
that and Funhouse are my favorite pinball games.
I have my eye on 3 different Star Wars ones.
He has a pinball corner in the
have
man
it.
cave.
You know this.
Ready to go.
I have it in the corner and a picture up there. You got to do your vision boards. So I have the picture up there of what I'm going to do with the pinball. So I had to see. I'm seeing the pinball behind you the entire time, and I'm like, man, I bet that's fun. And it's just blinking there. That's awesome, Christina. It's been a pleasure having you on here. Like I said, we want to connect with you and see if we can help in any way. We've got some resources and some ideas. But either way, people need to go there.
There it is again.
To the website, K and spelled out KFilm.com. I know there's links on there to help support. We really need to get this out, guys. I'm going to do a bunch of promotion just on this show on our channel and get that out for you.
I'm committed, man. I seriously think you write this into a dramatic screenplay and pitch it to Caviezel for that role where you can play the heavy that has the, Road to Damascus turn in it. I think
got to have the guy have the actual Road to Damascus.
No,
turn,
no,
though.
you don't. You don't need it.
So now we're going to fiction.
Well, fiction's fine based on a true story.
I want to make sure that the DVD release at a certain point, or the Blu-ray release at a certain point, has like 10 hours of additional footage. Of all the extra stuff that you couldn't get in, no matter what, if you make it into a whole miniseries. Yeah. Well, a lot of times they do a big theatrical release of the main film, and then they'll have a lot of straight to Blu-ray releases of additional footage or ongoing story or updates or stuff like that. And those do phenomenal. And I know that would 100% foster what you're doing to bring the truth to light. And it would also help a lot of these guys with their legal fights. So we really appreciate everything you're doing. We'll let you go with that, Christina. Did we want to continue talking on you and I, Shane? Do we want to take a little break, or do you want to just
Well, I can take it to just, the super source, and you guys can keep talking. We let Christina go.
Yeah, well, I can play the trailer again.
Sure, we use that.
And
as a
then
break. Yep.
Christina, we'll touch base after we end the show in about 40 minutes or so, and see if you've got your daughter to bed and if you want to chat for a little bit. But either way, it's been a pleasure having you on tonight, and we really thank you. So I'm gonna rewind this.
Yeah, God bless you.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Give me that trailer.
And we go now to new developments in the plot to kidnap and kill Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
13 suspects arrested, including 7 alleged members of a right-wing militia group.
Who are preparing to kidnap and possibly kill me.
The defense claims the FBI, through undercover agents and informants, were behind the plan, and that Fox and Croft were duped into going along with it.
What the FBI did is unconscionable.
It's almost like they had their evidence, had their facts, and created the crime.
Let's get a plan together to attack our governors all at the same time.
We can cloud the water. We can send everybody into disarray and chaos.
He's the perfect chameleon. He knew exactly what to say, how to say it.
Dan Chappell was the driving force of it all.
He was there to lead. He was there to orchestrate.
I think he viewed us as an opportunity.
Everything here is a lie or a manipulation.
It's almost impossible to fathom how brazen, how bold, and how dangerous these individuals were.
Thank you to the fearless FBI agents.
Inside, the takedown of the FBI agent who led one of the nation's biggest domestic terror investigations.
If you can think of a synonym for patriots, think of terrorists.
You're seeing the exact same methodology being used without difference.
Everything about this case was a terrorism attack. I agree, by the FBI.
Unlimited power, unlimited money. My biggest fear is being, called a terrorist from the nation that I love.
Your entire life could be taken away from you for something you didn't do.
What they've done is destroying lives.
And I will not stop until he's free or I die.
A saying we have in my office is don't let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christina. I'm the director and producer of Kidnap and Kill, an FBI terror plot, which you just watched the second trailer for. For those of you who don't know the story behind the film, let me just give you some background information. I'm an independent journalist who's been reporting on the case since these men were arrested for the past 4 years. We released our first trailer last year. We'd only conducted one interview at that time, and I used that to fundraise so that we've done multiple trips to Michigan. We've been able to interview over 20 different people across 8 different states. We've been able to travel to locations of interest, interview eyewitnesses, interview family members, get the stories of these men. And now that we've released the second trailer and we've done that work, we aren't fully funded. We still need to meet our fundraising goals so that we can edit the documentary, pay our editor, hire him an assistant, pay our colorist, pay a composer, pay a graphics person, pay for marketing and advertising. There's so much that goes into producing a documentary of this kind. It's such a massive and complex story. It's such a big story. It requires a lot of resources, and we need your help in order to tell this story and to get it done in a timely manner. These men don't have 3 years to wait for me to raise the funds over that time to get it out. They need this out sooner rather than later. So it's super important that we meet our full fundraising goal, which you can find on our website, knkfilm.com/donate. That will take you directly to our Give, Send, Go fundraiser. And any bit you can donate helps. This entire project has been 100% crowdsourced. We had no experience doing this before. We've never made a documentary before. We had no production company. We've had to teach ourselves all of this along the way. And I hope that you've seen all the work we've done reflected in this most recent trailer. And I hope that you guys help support this documentary. It means so much, I know, to these men and to their families, but also to our nation. Americans need to know what our government did 4 years ago. They need to know what the FBI is doing to American citizens right now. This story is bigger than Michigan. It's not just about these men. What they did to them, they want to do to you. And so it's so critical. I know so many people donate to politicians, right, that go down to Washington, D.C. to enrich themselves, and you don't really get a return on that investment. If you support our documentary, I can promise you, you will get a return on that investment in the form of a completed documentary that I think is going to be historic. So with that, thank you so much for everybody who has supported this film, who's gotten us this far. I know we can get to our funding goal and that we can get across the finish line and get this film out very, very soon. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.
And we're back. That was great having Christina on here. And now we're going to turn to a little bit of local stuff with me and Shane. Shane, you sent a whole bunch of stuff.
Yes, I did.
And I'm going to get to like 10% of it. Now we're gonna rapid fire this. As soon as I can find the trackball pointer, there you go. Having 3 screens, it disappears on me every once in a while and tries to take, it just goes over there. Thank you guys out there in chat.
Move my webcam back to middle, and then
yeah. Appreciate everybody. Dude, we're gonna promote the hell out of this when we get done.
Fucking kick-ass interview, man.
It was great.
This is one of our top 10 shows. Trejo probably owns about 3 of those top 10s.
Working my way into dominating the top 10.
That's why I changed it on the liner of the show. I was like a special guest, Christina.
Yeah.
And returning co-host.
Yeah. Oh.
Nice. Okay. I like the sound of that.
You're a regular co-host, buddy.
Okay. All right.
I'll take you. Right. Let's start with this one. Do you want to start with the?
Yeah, sure. The election steal 2.0.
I'm going to go in the order you gave them to me, or do you want me to switch them up?
Perfect to go in the order.
Okay.
So let's talk about this story. Came out last week about what's going on in Detroit. I was happy to contribute to the story. I'm quoting it several times. So
Detroit.
Yeah. So what's happening is, obviously based in 2020, a lot of our people were poll challengers, thinking that they could, have their constitutional rights upheld and be able to stop fraud that they saw happening at Huntington Place, TCF, the absentee.
You're referring to the most secure election in American
history of mankind.
Mankind's most secure election.
Okay, I just want to make sure I was on the same page with you on
the
that.
Challengers had thought that they would be able to, stop the steal, root out fraud, but they were hauled off. They put up the cardboard boxes, that whole deal. We all know what happened. We've gotten a little bit wiser this time around. So we're signing up to be poll workers so that we can be the people who are actually adjudicating the ballots as they come in and be in a better position if we see any fraud or chicanery or anything suspicious, to be able to, prevent that from being counted from
what was that
any sort of fraud from happening. Chicanery.
Chicanery.
What's the technical term? Now, our friend Jojo, she has mentioned, is there 2 or 3 tiers of poll assistance, worker, watcher, and then there's one more, I thought.
There's the ones that I know. There's election inspector, which is someone who works the polls, and then there's a poll challenger, also called a poll watcher. So I'm pretty sure those are the only 2 designations that there are.
There's a third.
So we've had a big push. The RNC's been recruiting poll workers, particularly for the Detroit Absentee Counting Board. So tons of people, many hundreds of people have signed up. But what's happening is the city of Detroit is doing their old tricks. So a lot of the people who are signing up, they're being told, "Oh, we already are filled at the Huntington Place, at the Absentee Counting Board. But hey, we'll put you in a precinct, down on the corner in the darkest, dingiest, most
Nowheresville,
violence-filled place in all of Detroit."
Yeah.
So that's kind of the game they're playing.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be able to provide a list of all the election inspectors they've hired to party officials. They are not doing that. It's a law that they have to do it. They're breaking the law.
Surprise! I'm really surprised by that.
And so that's what this story kind of goes into, is the different tricks that the city of Detroit is playing on Republicans who want to work as poll workers. Another thing that they're doing is they're saying to people, "Oh, well, if you want to work, you have to work for 16 days straight. You have to,
otherwise you don't get in."
Yeah, or you have to work for this whole thing, And then people are like, "No, that's ridiculous," and then they'll reduce it or something. But they're trying to just throw stuff at people.
Yeah.
To either scare them off, or make it so that they feel like, "Oh, I can't take 16 days off of my job or my small business.
Right.
Okay, I guess I can't do it." So it's that sort of deal.
The term I used was sabotage.
There's some sabotage that sabotage is in the eye of the beholder, I suppose. But it seems like it's going beyond just mere the incompetence you'd expect from Detroit government officials. It's going beyond that into actual malice, that they're setting it up to go down just like it did in 2020. And when you go in there to hand in poll worker applications, as I have several times, it's not like you can go up to the the person in the office and be like, hey, or even, not necessarily talk to that person, but talk to a staffer in the office. No, you're cut off by a security official when you go in the door.
You got an appointment?
And they'll just say, oh, yeah, we'll take those applicants. We'll make sure they need to go. We'll make sure they go where they need to go. That's kind of how they handle it.
Yeah, they'll make sure it goes right in the trash because that's where they think it needs to go.
Yeah, and so they don't want to hire people at TCF.
It's because you're a white supremacist. Come on, Shane. Just admit
but it's
it.
not. But look, it's not just me. It's anyone who's signing up as a Republican, and so they say, oh, we have all these Republicans at Huntington Place.
Aren't Republicans white supremacists by default, no matter what color they are?
That's some would say.
Okay.
Some would say.
Some would say. I wouldn't say it, but some would say it.
Exactly. So the people they hired at TCF are Republicans, but what Marion Sheridan has said is that when they hired a small amount of Republicans for the primary as well, a really minute number, and they said they were able to get the list of who those Republicans were, and they were able to deduce that a third of the list were actually Democrats. So the Republicans that they have, because there's no party registration in Michigan, Republicans poll challenge just means anyone who signed up and said, oh yeah, wink wink, I'm a Republican.
Yeah.
So who are they hiring to be at the absentee counting board? We don't know. They won't give us the list. If we had the list, we could be like, oh, that's a Democrat. That's a Democrat. This person's voted. Here they are at a Democrat meeting. Here's their social media post saying how much they hate Trump.
Here's
that's
their
the sort of stuff that we can figure out.
pointed tail. You can tell they're a Democrat.
The devil.
Yeah. So those are the sort of games that the city of Detroit is playing right now. And what's happening is the RNC filed a lawsuit meant to make Detroit follow the law. So let's go into the second.
So will these lawsuits make any headway before the actual election?
Well, they have. There's been a memorandum of understanding. You know what that is?
That's another piece of paper that's going to get filed in the trash.
Sounds like
did I guess that one correctly?
It sounds like
you called it
bullshit. Sounds like
so.
And
but
there
look
was
at what the RNC. This is item number 2.
Okay, item number 2.
Look at what
let me make sure I got the right one.
Is saying.
That one right there.
This is the chairman of the RNC. So he says another election integrity victory in Michigan when Detroit wasn't hiring enough Republicans. The RNC and MIGOP filed a lawsuit. Thanks to your action, they now have to follow the law and hire poll workers. Crucial win because of the memorandum of understanding. And
memorandum.
So here's the thing: is that if an injunction was filed in this lawsuit,
that would have teeth.
That would have teeth. They would.
But a memorandum.
But a memorandum.
What did Trump just say? What about the memorandum? What was his? What did he say about the memorandum? I only get one button per show. I think he said it was bullshit. So this memorandum's bullshit. So, but according to the RNC,
yeah, he says it's a huge victory, and now Detroit's going to have to follow the law because of this memorandum. There's no injunction, nothing really forcing them to do it. Scout's honor.
He thinks that they're going to follow the law. These are the same fucking people that put up cardboard on doors and brought in trucks of fake ballots that have, by and large, not been prosecuted in any way, shape, or form. There's a few little minion people that have been charged throughout the various states. These are the type of people that do fake bomb threat calls, and toilets are broken and flooding the basement, and then that didn't happen. And
explosions.
Oh, and we printed up the ballots, but they're
boom! These explosions of bullshit.
We've got ballots that are not the right size for just the Republican counties in Arizona, and Trump loses miraculously by the exact amount of votes that they needed.
Yeah, we all seen the chart where it just spikes upward after they stop counting the votes.
We did a show on that.
What they call
showed the chart.
We call that. They call that election Viagra.
Pretty much.
Yep.
So the RNC. Obviously they got rid of Ronna McDaniel. Everyone hated.
Right.
Rightfully so. Had no business being in that role.
Right.
Then we replaced them. They put Lana Trump as the vice chair. Oh, sweet. We're finally a pro-Trump organization. They have fired,
Trump's
quote
daughter.
unquote,
You're fired.
a lot of the RNC people, but guess what
Yeah.
they did quietly afterwards? They rehired them back.
Of course.
They rehired the vast majority of them back.
Wow.
So
well,
there-
maybe
it's
they
the
had a
same-
talking to. You never
It's
know.
the same old shit,
but maybe you
and
never
it's
know.
a different faces, that are in front of it. People faces that we are supposed to trust more.
Yeah.
But it's the
SSDD, same shit, different day.
It's the same shit, different day. The RNC is just as feckless as ever.
Yeah.
The lawyers that they have devising these lawsuits don't have injunctive relief in there because they, deep down, don't believe there's any election fraud.
They don't have any
They're
injunctive
doing
relief.
perfunctory lawsuits to just basically
To lose on purpose,
They're
still get
funky.
paid, and then go, well, I tried.
and and so if they're
He said they
a
were
lawyer who's
perfunctory.
involved with this, they're not going to get sanctioned.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to have their reputation hurt. They'll be able to find another job afterwards.
Right.
That's
right.
what it comes down
Well,
to.
and they've witnessed Jenna Ellis and
Mhm.
the Kraken lady, what the hell?
Sidney Powell.
Sidney Powell,
Right.
and a number of these other lawyers that actually did go out there and try to fight on
Mhm.
various avenues, whether they were solid cases or not. They went out there and fought. And Jenna is up there crying and, backtracking. And Sidney Powell, I think she's been either disbarred or she's been sanctioned.
Yeah.
And she's having to do her own legal battles. And Rudy Giuliani got involved. And not only did they not take the laptop from hell from him and actually pursue it, they went after him for having it. They went and seized his whole house full of stuff and didn't take the laptop. They took every other electronic device except the laptop, and they've bankrupted this guy.
That's that's how they operate.
Yeah.
And they think that, now that we have a memorandum of understanding,
Wow.
that these corruptocrats, these thugocrats are gonna abide by it because if they don't, then I'm sure Dana Nessel's gonna prosecute.
Well, it
them
seems
immediately,
reasonable
right?
to me.
So it's beyond ridiculous, and this harkens back to something that happened in 2020. So Exhibit 3 is up next.
Exhibit 3.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is what happened in 2020. So what happened in 2020 was my friend Adam.
You guys will see it in
DeAngeli-
a second when Tim pops back up.
My friend Adam DeAngeli in of Rescue Michigan. He recorded the poll worker trainers in Detroit cackling about how, just say 6 feet, 6 feet, they can't do anything, ha 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 ha, and like laughing about how they were going to systemically disenfranchise all the poll challengers. Well, that became a lawsuit. Now State Representative Steve Cara filed the lawsuit with election integrity activist Phil Cushman or Bob Cushman. So they they put this lawsuit into place, and there was a settlement. There was, I don't know if it was a memorandum of understanding, but the state agreed in settled as part of the lawsuit settlement that well, poll challengers can get within 6 feet on election day when doing their election duties. So we're like, sweet, man, it's a big win. That's great. And then a week later, what happened?
Yeah, this is back in 2020.
What happened
And
a week later? The poll challengers were 6 feet, 6 feet. Get him out of here. Oh, he's not giving my 6 feet. Haul him out of here.
So they used the
They did
COVID
the
bullshit
exact
to do.
same thing, and they wiped their ass with this settled lawsuit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, we'll settle it, get it out of here. Then we'll do whatever the hell we want because we know the Democrats in the state will not prosecute.
They treated
us.
it like a Detroit memorandum.
Yeah. And then they boarded it up. This is what preceded that. So the election challengers were disenfranchised and treated as criminals, and that's what they said was 6 feet, 6 feet. They used that COVID BS to disenfranchise people so they couldn't watch what was going on as the mysterious ballots came in at the dead of night. No chain of custody, no accountability, no transparency.
Safest election in American history.
So that's
by hundreds of thousands of votes. And then late in the evening or early in the morning, boom, these explosions of bullshit.
Explosions of bullshit.
Explosions of
So,
bullshit.
you know, can they do it again? I mean, who's going to stop them? Who's going to stop them?
Right.
You know, poll workers. You know, the one thing that I think is very important is that we flood the system with as many poll workers as possible.
100%.
What Marion Sheridan and other election integrity experts have told me is that once we've reached a number where the precincts are all filled with poll workers, then they'll have no choice but to start slotting more people in to the absentee ballot center. Because under the law, it says that every precinct needs to have an equal amount of Republicans and Democrats.
Right, which they never do.
But if those are filled, then all the excess people would have to, under the law, be hired at Huntington Place to do the absentee ballot counting.
Is Huntington Place the
TCF Center?
I know, but that is that.
Tobo.
Is that not all of them?
All of Detroit's ballots.
All of Detroit's ballots. Okay.
Yeah.
And we've got our own here in the various counties.
There's you know, it's done differently in each county, and you know, some people are signing up in Kent or Pontiac or wherever. You know, areas where there might be some fraud or something like that. But you know, the obvious fraud center is Detroit. It's the most corrupt town perhaps
We've got 4 counties in here that rule the whole rest of the state.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and you know, Detroit is a nexus for this corruption. So that's why we're encouraging people to flood in, so it's not too late to sign up and send in your poll worker application into Detroit, because we need to get those numbers up as much as possible to get as many eyeballs on the process as possible, as many people at the absentee counting board as poll workers as humanly possible.
And this is even though you're outside of that district?
And you can sign up even from anywhere in the state. You don't have to be from Detroit.
And then drive in?
You don't have to be from Wayne County.
Okay.
You can sign up and drive in and be a poll worker.
I would almost say
absentee.
I would almost say we have to do some poll worker drives. Go around to some I don't know, some places where there's, you know, captive audiences, and say, "Hey guys, here's the situation."
Right.
You know, churches or whatever. You know, because we don't have, I mean, how much time do we really have?
Not much.
20,
this is the last
28 days?
Yeah, this is the last
and then how
the last effort to do it, you know,
and then
people to sign up.
Right. And then when does
week.
that sign up, like 12 days before signups get cut off?
I don't think there's necessarily a cutoff, but people do have to attend a training after they've signed up.
Okay.
My training is on Monday, so
you
know, we'll see what
you wearing that
entails.
shirt?
Probably not. I'll probably wear like a pink shirt or something.
Not wearing the Delegates for Trump shirt when you go in
I
there?
might wear a Nikki Haley t-shirt so I can be like, oh, all these evil Trumpers.
Nice.
We'll see.
I just cut off 90% of my colored hair. Just had a haircut.
Oh,
I can't.
Oh yeah, your colored hair is gone. Now you can't be a.
You can't be a
look like a
Democrat.
shit lib.
Can't blend in to the libtards.
Yeah,
man.
So pull up number 4.
Number 4.
And this is the guidance for signing up as an election inspector in Detroit.
Okay.
It's available on my website, gnppac.com/delegates. So our delegate area where we have different guidances up for them. This is the guidance for signing up as an election inspector in Detroit. So there's the URL for application, just some different, you know, things that you should put on there.
Okay, can we post that?
Kind of walk you through the process.
Can we post that URL in show notes or in the comments?
Yeah, there's like a tiny URL in your Facebook.
Is there?
Messenger? Yeah.
Okay.
And because like the actual URL is just
like
the most
55.
The most ridiculously.
What did you do? I got flowers on the screen now.
I have to go to the tiny URL.
Oh, okay. Well,
yes, you do.
Then I guess I better go to a different shot.
Let's see. Tiny URL.
There it is.
There
so
it is.
tiny URL /EIDET2. Tiny URL /EIDET2.
I'm putting that in the comments section over here.
Under the show.
Perfect.
And there we go. Tiny URL. And
Yeah,
you guys
so
saw me do
that'll
all of that.
help you. That'll help you walk through it
No.
and make
How
it
do I
as
get rid
easy
of
as
this?
possible.
How do I get rid of the sidebar? Can I hide the sidebar?
I don't know.
Because the way our screens are set up, it needs to be.
I do not know.
I don't know. Anyway, so you see it there. Guidance for signing up for election inspectors in Detroit, and then page 2. But it's all on the website.
So it just
Tiny
explains
URL.
what it is, how much you'll get paid,
Yep.
how much you'll work.
Wait,
you
$300
know,
a day? I'm in.
you know, the pay can be pretty good. So you'll make some money and you'll be able to make a difference. This is the only chance. You're going to be the last line of defense against fraud. You know, this is our safeguard against fraud. If you're thinking that, oh, the RNC has gotten their shit together and they're going to do something to stop it, they're not. You think the MIGOP, is going in the right direction and they're going to do something to stop it? Highly, highly, highly doubtful. So it's incumbent upon you to be the person who gets involved to stop this and makes sure that you're in a position where you can, exercise, your rights, understand exactly, how to do the process, master the process. And then if you see any suspect ballots, it's a heck of a lot easier to slow down the process and do what you can to make sure that's investigated and rooted out any sort of abnormalities. Then if you're a poll challenger, you're on the outside, and the poll worker, you're on the inside.
Okay.
So, but obviously they know exactly what we're doing, and they're not happy about it. So they're gonna try to throw up roadblocks. We're gonna have Zoom trainings for poll workers in the near future, where we're gonna have people who've been poll workers in the past. They're gonna appear and give people guidance on how to act when you're being attacked by some of these nasty people who want you to lose your composure so they can haul you out of
Oh,
there or
look at this
whatever.
guy. He went crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So they want, so they'll have the tips of like how to do it, answer your questions, give you, pointers on keeping your composure.
Just the tips.
So just the tips, and we'll, so we want to show that, there's a community of us who are making it as easy as possible for people to go in there and do this sort of thing and have, success at, bringing some sort of, justice and accountability to the process. So
right.
We need a last push for poll workers. We need hundreds more. So if you're watching this, sign up as a poll worker right now. The URL is in the comments, and we need you. We need you to be on the front lines with us, because if we lose, we probably don't have a country any longer. So now's the time to get in the game, and there'll be a lot of people there by your side. Don't be scared. You have to be bold. They want you to be scared. They want you to be cowed. They want you to think like, oh, I don't want to get involved in that. What's the worst thing that could happen? We're all glad the founding fathers didn't think like that, because we wouldn't have America.
We wouldn't be here. Right.
So you have to have that mentality. You have to have that courage. You have to get on the front lines. You have to fight back against this attempted steal that's going down. They'll do it just like they can in 2020 unless we stop them. And it's going to be us who stops them, not some Republican.
Yeah, we'd all be speaking with a British accent and sipping tea.
Yeah. Isn't this...
We'd be like Canada. Ugh.
Oh, I don't know, eh? But
they are pleasant up there, though, aren't they?
They're nice. As long as
jolly people.
Yeah. As long as you're eating some flapjacks, some pancakes,
some poutine.
Yeah. Is that in Quebec?
Have you ever had poutine?
No.
It's French fries.
No, but I had poontang
with
gravy,
cheese curds, and gravy.
Sounds interesting.
Fucking delicious.
Is it? We're gonna have to make a road trip, buddy.
Yeah.
We're doing a road trip. We'll take the cameras and go on a road trip.
Do we have another? Is that it? Are we
no,
final thoughts?
That's it. We'll get ready for final thoughts here. But this to me speaks of what we can actually do grassroots, and circumvent these political establishment parties that obviously are not they're not there for us. They're there for their own agendas. I witnessed that just being at county convention and state convention. County convention less, it's more made up of the majority of our people, but definitely a state convention. There was so much jostling and so much political negotiations behind the scene. Yeah, there was some hickory dickory doc. There was a lot of shit behind the scenes that I was like, just,
It's nauseating, isn't it?
I stayed involved with county and state, not because I wanted to, but because I felt I needed to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what a lot of people, a lot of people really got disillusioned, disenfranchised over this last year from the huge grassroots movement. Yeah, the infighting was just bullshit. Shane, final thoughts, buddy. Pick a good color. There you go.
All right. My final thoughts are get involved. There, even though I just bashed the RNC or whatever, there's a lot of good things that are happening. There's with the Elon Musk's America PAC and Trump Force 47, there's a lot of people who are going out there and chasing ballots and doing what the liberals and the Democrats have done to perfection, is getting out every possible voter they can.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're doing now. We haven't done that in the past, and it's just crippled us. They have we have voting day, they have voting season. So if they have 40 days to vote, 40 days to get people out to the polls and vote, and we only have one, what an inherent disadvantage that puts us at. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, there's ways to vote with absentee ballots that are safe. If you get your absentee and you take it in during early voting, it gets processed with the rest of the ballots, and makes it much more difficult to cheat.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could take it in with your county clerk and have it placed there. Also very low potentiality for cheating. If you use ballot boxes or mail-in votes, then that's where the door is really open for the cheat.
Right.
But you don't have to do that with an absentee ballot. So get your absentee ballot, vote early, vote safely, and then sign up as an election worker and work on election day. That's what we have to do. We have to be smart. We have to understand that not everyone is as passionate of a voter as we are. A lot of conservatives, they may be like, it doesn't really matter. We have to engage them. We have to persuade them. We have to twist their arm and make sure that, hey, you might as well vote. It does make a difference.
Right.
And every vote, this stuff adds up. This stuff adds up. So we have to make the persuasive arguments to people that they need to be involved in the process, even if they're not completely enthusiastic about it.
Mm-hmm.
We have to twist their arm. That's what the left does to their people.
Right.
And they do it well. So we have to do that just as well, or we're going to lose our country. So
what's that other
give it a fight?
What's that other tactic? Is request your absentee, keep it sealed, and then go vote in person. And then if they claim, you've already voted absentee, say, I have my absentee ballot sealed right here.
Right.
And you can't, get your vote stolen.
Yeah, that's you can
That's
do
the
that
ultimate
during
tactic.
early voting. Yeah, that's the way to do it. So that is processed like a regular ballot, but you get it early, and you can work on election day. So you have to be smart. You have to play the game as it is. We would all love it was just all one day for people to vote, and absentee was just for different for military and people who are crippled or severely elderly or something like that.
Right.
We would all prefer if it were that way, but it's not. It's now written in the Constitution that
Or dead people vote absentee.
It's now written in the Constitution that there's anyone get an absentee ballot, and there's a lot of different ways that the voting process has been opened up here in Michigan. So as much as that sucks, the only way we can win and overturn it is by looking at the rules as they are, getting involved in that way, and getting all of our people out and maximizing the amount of ballots that are turned in. That's the whole ethos behind Trump's too big to rig philosophy, and it's sound. And I know hundreds and hundreds of people who are doing this constantly, chasing these ballots and going door to door and doing this work, who are and they're the real deal, passionate activists, not the someone who's just getting a paycheck,
not the sunshine patriot.
Not just phoning it in. No, these are real patriots who are out there, really busting their ass constantly, every day, day in and day out, leaving it all on the field for their country. And if you're watching this and you're not really doing anything, you need to join them. It's not too late. Become a poll worker and get on the front lines to save this country. And
you've got a lot of great resources. GNC PAC or GNP PAC, GNPPAC.com. Read that quote for us that you've got right on the splash page, the front there.
Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful and committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has.
Margaret Mead. Very interesting. And so you've got a whole bunch of resources on there.
Yep. So if you scroll down and you'll see delegates and get connected here.
Yeah. That'll take us to
all
the
of our resources are.
Yeah. So guys, go check that out. We've got to stay involved, even though some of us have been very disillusioned by the things going on locally and state. Number one, we've got a leader in Donald Trump and a number of leaders in pockets throughout this country that are true, that are legitimate, America first, conservative, on the right side of most issues that we do need to support. And the bottom line is the vast majority of this whole country thinks the same way we do. Want America to be great. We want to take care of our families. We want to live in the land of the free and the home of the brave, not be enslaved. So very powerful. Well, you guys see the resources, go there, check that out. But get involved and go check out KNK film.com.
KNKfilm.com.
KNKfilm.com. I'm going to full screen that again.
Yeah, I can't wait to start, when it's done.
Yeah.
Start having showings here and building a grassroots groundswell around that movie, getting it to go viral. And
100%.
We're gonna make some lasting political change.
Oh, I'm feeling we need to get involved before it's done. I think there's something there. We might be able to help out.
We might be able to help out. We'll check that out.
Tim, this is a serious documentary. It's not going to be your meal ticket, brother.
Dude, it might be fucking my meal ticket. Are you kidding me? This could be my end. I could meet Caviezel and we could start making some.
It's not even involved. I don't know why you keep invoking this guy.
Because I heard this story and I swear that character is going to be perfect for him.
All right. Thank you guys all for tuning in tonight. We appreciate everything. Like, share, and subscribe. Most of you will be catching this tomorrow and the next day or two. We haven't been doing Sunday nights on a regular basis. And there was a Lions game, which we've got to go catch the second half of.
Yeah, I got NFL Plus. I'm going to go watch the whole thing in 22 minutes.
But it's been a great time. Christina was awesome. We'll touch base with her. Shane, always a pleasure to hang out with you, my brother.
Absolutely.
We had a good dinner. We had a good conversation.
Yep.
Great
Great
night.
cast. Great cast.
All right. We will catch you guys on Tuesday.
Couple QRs, Outlook email. Pretty much that's what I got for him.
Okay.
Bang, bang, bang.
Bang, bang, bang.
And then the close. Pause the screen there. Scan those. Throw some cash.
Every little bit helps.
Close. You got to say and.
And we're out.
This is my brain.
Dad, that's an egg. Yeah, that's an egg.
Honey, Dude.
That's an egg.
Seriously.
That's an egg.
It's a metaphor.
It's still an egg.
That's an egg.
I would challenge you.
That's an egg.
I know my brain is not actually an egg, okay? It's a metaphor.
Metaphor or not, that's not your brain.
It's just an egg. Una cerveza para mí. My egg is my brain.
Can I at least have some bacon, maybe some sausage with that egg, though?
Oh, I want some bacon.
I want crepes.
Have some bacon and pancakes with that egg.
I'll take it with cheese.
Extra large brown cage-free eggs.
Can I have your brain with cakes?
A sausage and a little toast and potato.
That would be great.
Does it have antibiotics?
I don't know, man. I'm not good at this shit.
Well, they got to be able to resist some diseases.
You resist the disease.
Has it got any hormones?
Maybe. It's cage free.
Vegetarian?
Maybe.
Are they vegan?
No, I eat steak.
Never apologize and never explain.
Never apologize.
Yeah. Never apologize and never explain.